Howdy ho again, everyone. In this video, I've compiled the complete adventures of my many exploits through the harsh and unforgiving world of Project Zomboid. I completed these challenges in individual segments over the last few years, but they remain scattered across the interwebs in shorter form. So today, I'm bringing you the complete saga, compiled, edited, and enhanced for the ideal viewing experience. So today, I present to you in its entirety, Project Zomboid, the complete survival saga. It's always an exciting experience to watch the ticking of data unfolding before your eyes as you make progress toward your goals. So today in Project Zomboid, starting from one single tile, I'm going to use the Tileman mod so that every time I kill a zombie, I unlock another tile. This challenge was based on the amazing one Arian did in Project Zomboid a few months ago, which was originally based on the Tileman Run by SRAM1337 and popularized by Settled in old school RuneScape. When I tried it for myself on stream, one of my viewers named Brad, who's also a programmer, actually emailed me out of the blue with a mod he created that forces you to stay stuck in a tile until you kill a zombie. So after this video, I'd encourage you to go check out all those playthroughs and the mod in the description. But without any further ado, how long would I be able to survive? I spawned in on day 1 in the morning, 9 a.m., located on the ground floor of a house in Louisville, located in the midst of a dense residential community, with a few reanimated ghouls loitering outside my window. Equipped with only the clothes on my back, the only resources at my disposal were the books located in the shelf beside my starting square, but that was all I could reach. Pretty much useless. My first goal was to locate a weapon, then food, water, and a bedroom for sleeping, preferably with a secure door between me and the dead for when I got tired. But I'd need to expand out to the rest of the house with my tile radius, and that necessitated attracting only one zombie to break into my house, hopefully without alerting the whole horde outside. I called out to attract the attention of any ghouls nearby the house. Only one at first. A forest ranger I wrestled in hand-to-hand combat. With the first one dead and the first tile unlocked, now there was a little space to move around for inching my way toward the kitchen cabinets. Next, another ghoul drawn by the sound crawled through the window. Another wrestling match, and another tile closer to the cabinets. I equipped its leather jacket for protection from scratches. One by one, with another coming through the window, I now had a longer space to walk around in, and I could shout from farther back in the house. This would make sure I'd lead the undead in just one at a time. 1 and 2 more wrestling matches, and now I'd unlocked enough tiles to get a full inventory of the cabinets. Water. I can now use the tap to satisfy my thirst and store liquid in a tumbler from the cabinet beneath the sink. A few cans of food, but no weapon yet. But as luck would have it, there was a crowbar in the back of the next zombie that came through the windows. So now I had most of it, or at least temporarily. Food, water, and a weapon. But I still needed shelter for sleeping at night. The day was getting older. To unlock enough tiles to get to the bedroom upstairs, though, I need to inch my way toward the front door so I could attract their attention from the porch outside. I continued shouting from the back of the house to make sure I'd attract the undead in, only one by one. Any more and I'd get overwhelmed, and fast. So I downed 5 more of them, and I unlocked each of the last spaces to make my way out into the outdoor world. A new space, but with it came some perils. It was tricky. Whether through sight or sound, it would be easy to make a great noise to attract too many. So instead I whispered, or moved around, or attempted to just attract the attention of only one at a time, whispering to one nearby, or one who happened to be facing in my general direction, and I made a little room to fight them in the entryway. Then with a few more kills, I unlocked the tiles farther back toward the stairs, gradually making my way up to secure the bedroom that was clean and clear of corpses, and it would let me sleep safe from the undead. And it was well removed from any corpses in the downstairs that might cause me to grow sick from inhaling the air nearby. Having secured the basic necessities of food, water, shelter, and a weapon, or at least in the short term, I turned in for sleep around midnight. After a rest, on day 2 I awoke at 6 a.m. to a fog whose cover I used to lure in more ghouls one by one to my porch. The railway around the outside made for an effective screen I could use to get them to fall in and onto the floor in my very own kill box. To make it more effective, I stacked a chair and a television in the openings to force them over the banister, where it would be easier for me to take them out on the ground. Whispering through the fog and calling out, I attracted the few nearby and made safe the area by picking up the glass shards around the broken window through which they had first climbed into my starter house. But I was limited to close quarters, and I nearly made a fatal error when one of them lunged over the fence and scratched me, tearing a near-fatal wound in my neck, right when my guard was down and I'd finally secured some greater fortifications. But I bandaged, and I continued inching my way outward, a little more cautiously this time. Step by step, I made my way east, calling out ghouls one by one to dispatch them and unlock more tiles to get closer to the street corner and get a better look at my surroundings. But gradually, at least for the time being, my shouts were growingly ineffectual at drawing a tide. I was alone in my island of tiles, and if there were no more ghouls, I'd stagnate and remain stuck near my starter house. And so I slept on day 2, and arose on day 3 to wait for the zombies to wander closer to my neighborhood, where I had cleared so many in the days before. But the day was lonely, and I spent most of the time calling out, trying to attract the attention of any ghoul that might be standing nearby. The fact of the matter was that I just didn't have enough tiles to attract a horde, and I remained stuck on my island. And if I couldn't attract any, I'd perish in my home. But then it occurred to me when I was standing inside of the house, and a watch alarm sounded on one of the corpses. I struggled to locate it before it went off, but if I could gather enough digital watches on all the bodies, set their alarms at regular intervals, and place them together in a satchel I'd scavenged off of one of the ghouls, I could effectively be in multiple places at once, making noise. So I took the satchel with all the watches and their alarms set, and I placed it out on the street so that any passing ghoul would be lured into a noise trap. This way I could conserve energy and spread my net wider in my search for the undead, now that the length of my path had grown so much longer and more tenuous. Still, even then the watch alarms weren't loud enough, and new problems reared their ugly head. I was beginning to starve, and I couldn't even expand out my tile radius. But instead, I had to spend tiles creeping my path toward the fridge, only to be greeted by a few rotten leftovers. After a night of shouting to try to attract the attention of anything nearby that would hear me, I slept into day 5, knowing I'd need to find another way. I considered the resources and tools at my disposal. Through the fighting, I had managed to secure both a revolver and a shotgun from some of the riot officer zombies I'd taken out near the house. Originally, it seemed like a death sentence, ringing the dinner bell. But now, in an act of desperation, I shot one of my precious rounds off at 7 a.m. to signal all the nearby Zeds. Fighting them was a struggle, but it would grant me enough tiles to access the nearby station wagon, which I could use to honk the horn and finally secure a better way of making a louder noise to attract the undead. And I didn't rely on the precious few shells I had running out for my shotgun. In short, it worked. It was risky fighting them out in the open, but it gave me enough tiles to stretch my path all the way up to the car. But with a great victory also came a huge letdown. The car was totally jacked up. It couldn't start, and its horn didn't even work. I'd wasted so many tiles, stretching out in a direction that ultimately turned out to be useless. But I still had some food left, and I wasn't desperate, so I looked over my surroundings. If I wanted to make any progress, I'd still need a car horn to signal nearby Zeds. And the car parked in the driveway to the west looked more promising. Unfazed, I gathered back up my supplies and started yelling again in front of my house to get more ghouls to come over and unlock more tiles. I kept looting, and I even found thick, scratch-proof firefighter gear on a Zed in front of one of the houses. And so through the day, after a lot of struggling and clawing, by 5 p.m. I'd made my way at last to access the car door. As luck would have it, the car was in near perfect working order, with the key located in the glove compartment. With everything ready, I finally slammed on the horn and drew the whole horde nearby. Now the real challenge could begin. Not just tiptoeing from house to house anymore with precious few tiles, but instead pull whole swaths of them. So after I dispatched a few more, I started unlocking more tiles in the house to the west. And then I made my way inward to start searching for more food and weapons. My crowbar was now getting bent out of shape, and my food stockpiles were dwindling. Now I could focus on the longer-term battle, opening up and unlocking the entire world around me. So I fought my way into the dawn on day 6. I kept sounding the car horn, drawing a horde, fighting them, then unlocking more tiles to expand the whole network of them, lighting up beneath my feet everywhere I stepped. I carved out a triple-wide path from the driveway to start moving the car out into the street. So that was how I fought them, and then I slept into the afternoon on day 6. Now the hordes I drew with the car's horn were growing larger as I moved the car into uncleared territory, and I lured them over the fences near the houses so I could stomp them on the floor. I used their brainless shambling to my advantage and led them in a lineup from house to house, all the while staying safe while crushing them underfoot. At long last, I now had a surplus of tiles, making it easier to walk around freely. I ventured into a nearby house to collect more canned food. Finally, it started to feel like I could focus on my long-term aims. I had secured lots of food, water, and shelter. And so from day 6 into day 7, I continued repeating my pattern of attack. Run into the intersection, cry out aloud, and then lead the hordes of undead back to my porches where I could dispatch them one by one. I was racking up hundreds of kills, one by one unlocking new tiles to draw in more zombies and open up the rest of the world for more and more area as I grew stronger and stronger. It almost started to feel like I wasn't even limited to the tiles anymore. but I was just stuck with my own incapability, my own weakness. I needed to get stronger. Every day was a workout, and my exertion as well as my combat prowess rose. I was still overweight, but I was losing it rapidly. I unlocked wider paths in front of the house to make my job easier, and I fought and contended well into the 7th night, as I grew stronger and more capable, but still tired from the fighting. Then once again, for the last time, I returned home past midnight into the 8th day. 1 week gone by and I rested. Now at long last I could avail myself more amenities. Open the rest of the tiles in my bedroom, take the blood off my clothing, explore the rest of the house, unaffected by my prison of tiles. I even found extra supplies and another crowbar in the closet nearby. Now all the hard work was finally paying off. I fought a little more, and then I rested into the middle of the day, finally giving in to the warped circadian rhythm from fighting tooth and nail for so long. I slept at noon. But then, I arose at 5:50 p.m., stirred by a most unwelcome and hideous sound. The whirring, persistent chopping of the helicopter blades overhead that warned. The chopper event, for which I had completely neglected to plan. Maybe if I had seen it coming, I would have been able to plan a circle of my paths to keep leading them around. But as it stood, I was a sitting duck with no plan B. So I rushed from my bedroom to gather my strength and prepare for a fight like none I had yet faced. You know, somehow it always feels like in the matrix of planning that is Project Zomboid, something always falls through the cracks. And that crack widens into a yawning, gaping maw that swallows you up. It's Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong, will go wrong. And as I wrestled my car into ignition, the folly of planning became clearly evident right in front of me. In Project Zomboid, as well as in real life, everything, no matter how masterful an ambition or meticulously planned, will come to a grisly end. Perhaps the best thing you could do is accept it with grace. We'll do better next time, leaving a mark on the wall. As Shelley once said, "Behold my works, ye mighty, and despair." 7 days and 10 hours, 437 zombies killed. And then, I joined the writhing gray masses of those who had come before. The joy of life comes when you surrender to your fate. Only then can you really savor it, maybe. The living dead are walking among us. Every day, our homes, our livelihoods, and our businesses are under assault from the clawing threat of shambling undead ghouls. For a challenge, I tried to see if I could survive in a single house in Project Zomboid, but this time, there's a horde of zombies every night. The rules for this challenge are simple. I have to stay on my property at night. I can expand it, but I have to build it out first. Every day from 4 a.m. to 10 p.m., it's daylight, and I'm allowed to leave the house and scavenge the neighborhood for supplies. But at night, when the undead lay siege to the home, I have to come back and defend my property. Those were the rules, but how many days would I survive? Oh, and before we begin, shout out to the Horde Every Night mod for Project Zomboid. If you want to try this challenge for yourself, there's a link to it and the other mods I'm using down below. I spawned in on day 1 in my starter house with nothing but a watch on my left wrist, a little after 8 a.m. on October the 20th. The first thing I did was to close the curtains to the snow outside so that the undead wouldn't notice me stirring within, and I turned on the TV and changed the channel to Life and Living, hopefully to catch some informational survival broadcasts before the electricity cut out. While I waited on the programming, I searched the garage for useful tools, an axe and a metal pipe for simple weapons. I went out front and used the pipe to bash in the brains of the ghoul loitering on my front porch, clearing the front and backyards, and stealing his coat for protection. I cleared out the rest of the house, overgrown with weeds, and discovered a beginner carpentry text. And I sat down on the first floor and read it in front of the TV, where the carpentry show had come on to boost my XP gains. After all, next I was going to have to start making use of my carpentry skills to barricade my home and construct tools to defend myself. I went outside in the rain to cut down trees and saw logs to build a set of wooden spears. Then I used those to stab all the ghouls in the street to clear out the block. It made safe the entrance to a treasure hoard, the house across the street, a barricaded survivor home containing a surfeit of armaments, everything from swords to axes and all that lay in between. I towed it all the way back to my garage and threw it on the ground to sort later if I had the time. After all, it was getting late in the evening, and I had more logs to saw to barricade my windows and catch the fishing show on TV before 10 o'clock when the first horde would arrive. Donning gloves and better armor, I guarded the front door with my upgraded spears, made sharper by fastening screwdrivers to their ends. And then they came. The first night was only 10. Nothing crazy, but every night another 10 appear. So 10, 20, 30, and so on, until eventually, well, Best not to think about that yet. For the first day, I had to back off into the living room, but the weapons from my neighbor's house were more than enough for home defense. I slept even before midnight, putting an end to the first day. I awoke on the second day to clear out any stragglers from the first night. Then I searched the nearby homes for more books to learn carpentry, mechanical, and electrical skills faster. One I had slain was carrying a large backpack for me to store and haul all my loot in. I kept moving house to house, collecting tools and armor to ferry back home, but unfortunately, no firearms. So I studied mechanical skills that day, knowing that the few items in my personal neighborhood would do little for me past the first 3 or 4 nights. I needed wheels and a truck to get better supplies from town. With all that, I spent the second night in more amateur home defense, and again I slept before midnight. Knowing the urgency, on day 3 I got to work fixing the cars to hotwire a truck and make my way out of the neighborhood. I lucked out with some reanimated police officers and managed to snag a Spaz 12 shotgun and some shells off of one of the bodies to defend my house the next couple nights with. All the while I invested in learning so I could break out of the neighborhood. Nights 3 and 4 I defended my home with the shotgun, scraping by with more of the swords from the house across the street. All that bought me time to dismantle TVs from around the neighborhood. And finally, by the end of night 5's horde, 50 zombies, I was able to steal a truck from a nearby house to make my way north, all the way to the Army surplus store located in Louisville, and claim a payload of weapons. This place had everything needed to survive, tens of firearms, and hundreds of boxes of ammunition. But best of all of them, an AA-12 fully automatic shotgun. It's very effective when combined with the drum magazine containing 20 shells, which they also had. I consolidated over 300 kilograms of items into my trunk and returned home, where I prepared to dig in for the long haul. Parking the truck in the garage, now I had all the arms I needed. Nights 6 to 8 proved easy going, and it gave me time after the attacks to frame my defenses. Now I could funnel them in from greater Louisville to my enclosed neighborhood. I used my one working truck to push wrecked vehicles out of the way, and I started chopping down all the trees in the neighborhood for more logs. That would help me build lanes of fire for the undead when they'd eventually arrive at nightfall. 2 tiers of defense, an outer wall for the whole block, and an inner one for my house itself. When I started losing weight from all the manual labor, I took frequent breaks to eat the last perishable foods in the fridges of the neighborhood and keep weight on my bones. By day 19, I'd finished the frames. Then working day and night, by day 21, I'd finally managed to fill in most of my wall frames and stage lookout nests from which I could pick off invaders. The first few nights, they started taking down my walls, so I just used my platform as a lookout to pick off any nearby ghouls. But then I started contouring my defenses to funnel them in from outside. After all that labor, now I had 2 complete walls for defense. But the whole endeavor had cost me more precious body weight, making it a toil to haul the heavy planks for my defenses. After all that labor, I rinsed off the filth and returned home to rest. The next set of tasks took days, but I hauled in furniture from the neighborhood to pad the defenses and make sure the undead would come straight for my gate. I brought in every TV from the neighborhood nearby. Then I positioned all my boxes of shotgun shells on the lookout post, so I never had to travel far to reload. So as the days went on, I replaced my doorway with a larger gate, so that I could take the van back out for another supply run. The horde nights, after all, were getting more and more intense, and I needed another restock, as well as tactical vests for easier access to the ammunition I was carrying. Better armor wouldn't hurt either. So after the horde on day 30, I drove south through Louisville to the survivor evacuation shelters at the city's border. Past the refugee camps lay the military's answer to the outbreak, a fully kitted set of tents. But most importantly, ghouls wearing tactical gear to reduce my weight encumbrance. The area was mostly abandoned and fenced all around, so it was safe for looting, save a few I neutralized quietly. The spoils were more than I'd ever find in civilian homes and stores, and beyond that, I looked pretty damn cool. Or maybe there's just something about the sound of a suppressed automatic shotgun. Silent, deadly, and effective. Now, with the second source of supplies, I could focus on making myself into the ultimate warfighter. So throughout the entire day, I unloaded and reloaded my magazines, practicing thumbing through the bullets until I skilled up. Now I had all the ammo and supplies I could ever want, but I'd need to stay in keen fighting condition throughout the night to take on hordes that were starting to grow outrageously large. So, wave after wave, they washed upon the compound, and when they broke down the gate, I led them house to house inside the walls. Mostly it was working, besides of course the panic which still rattled my aim. So when the snowstorms had stopped, I drove back out into town, this time northeast through the overgrown blocks to the pharmacy. And once I'd cleared the area, I ducked inside to grab beta blockers from the counter and sneak them back out into my van. Then I made my way deeper and scavenged through the ruins of the local malls. And after clearing out yet more consumer hotspots, I earned my right to choose winnings from the local gun store in the mall. Heavily defended and locked up, I awaited an opening to secure the loot. For all the good fortune, coincidentally at this location, the best item I found was improved body armor on a reanimated riot officer. But this was all getting to be a lot for one man to carry. Back at home, I performed push-ups, squats, and burpees to get into better shape and carry all the body armor and ammo each night without getting over-encumbered. And when the fatigue started kicking in and giving me pain during the Horde nights, I started experimenting with new supplements, painkillers, and coffee to stay awake and accurate. I even spent days just switching mags on the fly to max out my reloading speed. It'd all be worth it when I tapped out and had to reload, running from the trains of ghouls whenever they breached my fortress. Certainly it was a lot to manage, but the tides were growing larger, and I knew my ammunition would ultimately be the limiting factor. So I started experimenting again, but this time with the M72 Law anti-tank missile launcher, the China Lake grenade launcher, whatever bizarre weapons I could get a hold of. And beyond that, I was only scratching the surface of all my 5.56 ammo. I parked the van in front of the entrance, so the ghouls had to drop to their hands and knees to get inside, lending me the upper hand and yet another height advantage. But some of the experiments didn't go as planned, and I wound up in hot water. Still, I knew I'd have to rely on something crazier to get by soon enough. I started parking more trucks and lighting campfires somewhere I knew the flames wouldn't spread, but still catch onto any corpse crawling along the ground. It seemed pretty effective and conserved more precious ammunition, but after a while you do start running out of bullets. Alternate solutions were sought, campfires as islands between barricades of parked cars. I had plenty of fuel from all the tattered rags lying around. Fire, after all, was unlimited and never ran out. The more of them there were, in fact, the better for spreading it around by getting them to bump up against one another, igniting the conflagration even in the thickest snowstorm and the harshest conditions. A bit of a cheese, to be fair, but honestly this got me through strong up to the day's 70 and 80 mark. At which point, it honestly most just became about watching and waiting in a battle of attrition. Monotony sets in, more about maintaining the line rather than actively seeking to improve yourself each day. No more looting runs, just watching the line, maintaining and making repairs. They'd keep coming through as long as I led them car to car, despite their dulled senses from the blizzard conditions. But ultimately, that's to say, it's the resourceful use of the basic elements, fire and heat, that win the day. Outdoing even the most seasoned veteran with the best tools tenfold, 100-fold. I heard Nightmod actually stopped sending increasing numbers after day 80. I never thought I'd honestly make it that far to begin with, but I've added a few hours since the last time I played, so I must have improved somehow. So I just kept getting sent the same wave from days 80 to 100, at which point I declared the challenge won. Life is needlessly complex at times, and I thought I would find some solid ground, some kernel of wisdom or capital T truth, by constructing upon self-reliance itself, at home. Every home is equipped with far more resources than most players will ever explore in Project Zomboid. Usually when they spawn in, most people will immediately exit the first house after they've gathered a few basic items. But being stuck in one place invites resourcefulness and exercises creativity. Almost everything can be dismantled, recycled, and recrafted into something more useful and ingenious than its components. Because I wanted to deeply understand the game's crafting and survival at its core level, I stripped away almost all of the fat and decided to use only the bare necessities. So for a new challenge, I decided to see how long I could survive in a single house, without leaving for any reason. I needed to formulate a build capable of maximizing on a small space, so I chose to max out my carpentry stat. For negative traits, I chose obese, agoraphobic, conspicuous, disorganized, hard of hearing, clumsy, short-sighted, slow reader, and Sunday driver. These characterize someone who has a lot of time on his hands. For positive traits, I chose wakeful, brave, lucky, fast learner, handy, and strong. I built my character Home man, the spitting image of America, hard-working and fat. Day 1, I spawned in, sedentary and full of purpose. The first task was urgent: get to the television and sit down to watch Life and Living TV. These were valuable stat points I couldn't miss out on. Just for watching TV for a few minutes, it's over 1 skill point in cooking. The show ended, but that was the only one I couldn't afford to miss. I'd have to scour for books now. Luckily, there on the shelf was Expert Carpentry and Master Carpentry. This was the only bit of time-sensitive information. You need to read through all of Advanced Carpentry if you want to get the most out of the Carpentry show. There's scheduled times at which this essential programming takes place in Zomboid's first days, and the Nox event is time-sensitive. Miss too many days and you'll miss out on those skills. And there's actually quite an absurd amount of skill grinding to get through if you ever want to build up into the ceiling. And I was a slow reader. I don't know how much time passed on that day, but the Carpentry show came on while I was reading. An unfortunate turn of events, but one I'd need to sit with. Still, I was learning carpentry at a very fast rate because of my XP boost. And you could actually read while you're watching TV. Double knowledge. Then, a neighbor. So I let her in. And another one. 2. Even more. Springing to action, I dispatched several foes in the house very quickly. This is actually a very good thing, though. Being unable to leave one house, you want many zombies in your house. But now it was time to close the curtains, something I should have done right when I started, and so I did, and allowed in the new guests, closed the windows, and I set off about moving the curtains from the upstairs to the downstairs. Some things are unavoidable, but I could add sheets to the windows of the rooms I was occupying, sealed and shut off. With the assault over, I rested, and I found a watch on one of the zombies to know what time it was. One of them carried a walkie-talkie on it as well. This might be useful. July 9th, 2:30 p.m., and still plenty of time before the next Carpentry show. It's also fine that I was losing weight. I picked obese intentionally to save myself more time, and so I passed the rest of the afternoon, raising my XP multiplier on Carpentry by reading the book. A fishing show came on. Not that it was much use to me, but I did gain a skill point in that. I read all the way to 10 p.m., and then I decided to move around. It was enough sitting and reading for one day. Then I decided to take all the pots and pans out of the kitchen. Bowls, anything in a container. The foods would stay good for a while, but I needed all the water I could get. So I filled everything up. Bottles, saucepans, cooking pots, kettles, mugs, bowls. It was all clean water to me. Bloodied from the fight, I also decided to use what I could of the washing machine on my jeans, as well as my shirt. Disrobed, I turned on the washing machine. This might draw attention. The other houses had been broken into, but noise transportation does pretty well between walls. So I just turned off the light, along with the other lights in the house. I washed before bed at the toilet, but I was wrong. Night visitors. This meant a fight in the nude in the dark. Not fun, but at least my clothes were clean, if soaking wet. This was worthwhile. At around 12 a.m., the next cooking show came on, and the next zombie entered the window. For fear of missing out on any more educational programming, I decided not to sleep, but rather sit down and read. Read for many hours in front of the light of a TV. Listening for zombies all the while that might try to break some of my windows. At least it was helping my Carpentry multiplier, because my reading was slow. Since I'd designed my character to be so brolic, it didn't actually matter that I was extremely hungry and reduced in strength, but rather, I subsisted on knowledge. And then I heard it. A zombie broke one of my windows. It was in the living room right next to me, and another. 2 had come through. This was bad. I removed the broken glass and cleaned the floor, and then I bandaged my hand. This was not great. I was canned food in there, waiting for foes to strike and eat me. By around 5:40 a.m., I completed the Carpentry book. With all that done, my Carpentry multiplier stood at a whopping 8, along with a 125% XP boost. The next time I caught the Carpentry show, I would level up. This is important. Carpentry would eventually pave my way to sustenance. With that time-sensitive piece done, I could relax a little bit. I watched the cooking show, learning, and all the while improving. The next task was a little unintuitive, using a crowbar in the closet. I started disassembling and picking up the birchwood floors off the ground. If I got lucky, I might destroy some of them and yield planks. But unfortunately, when you're good at carpentry, there's a great tendency to not break anything. This was really the only downside of having so much skill. The whole dining room yielded nothing to me. Still, I didn't need the furniture for anything, but with the TV programming off, if I wanted much more skill, I'd have to start disassembling furniture. I'd start with stuff that was useless. The floors yielded floorboards, and I could disassemble the chairs. So with my XP boost, every chair yielded about 80 experience, along with necessary nails. Chairs are almost completely useless in Project Zomboid, so this was fine. 4 chairs and a table took me nearly to level 5. Unfortunately, I'd wasted some of the wood, but I had plenty of nails to practice with. Next, it was time to disassemble the couches. These also didn't matter, and although they're a nice prop, they just aren't useful for survival. The couch and the chairs together, these yielded enough experience for carpentry level 5. Now just another 3,000 away from carpentry level 6. With level 6, I'd be able to build stairs. This was pretty important. More furniture disassembly, the fancy low table, the bookshelf, the upstairs chair, the other upstairs chairs, with frequent stops back at the TV. Now 863 carpentry experience. This was an absolutely stupid amount of carpentry experience. Being an expert at the beginning, and watching TV, the 8 times experience is just fantastic. With carpentry level 6 reached, my next goal at survival was evident. I gathered planks and nails up, and disassembling everything else in the house, and the other remaining bookshelves, along with some of the countertop in the bathroom. I finally had the necessary planks to build a stairway. This may seem like a weird place to build a stairway, but I can assure you that it's absolutely necessary. If we're to stay within the confines of the house, that means we need to build up. I built flooring just above the entryway. From here, I could at least get a better look at what the neighborhood was like around me, and even call out to zombies if I needed to attract them. There weren't many nearby, but it was enough if I needed them for some resources. Time to head back downstairs. Time is still of the essence here. In many starter homes, you might find cabbage seeds. These are absolutely necessary. In fact, I made sure of it in my starter house. If you don't spawn with these things, you need to restart. Otherwise, you can't live in the starter house. You also need a bag of dirt. This may seem a bit excessive, but if you do manage to find it, you can dig a furrow. With my work completed, I was able to open up the package of cabbage seeds and sow cabbages into the roof. It's completely safe to do this at any time of year. I then watered them with what remained in my water bottle, along with what was in the cooking pot and the saucepan. That was enough to make them well watered. But now, more invaders. I fought them without leaving the house. Now this was getting to be a lot of dead bodies throughout the house. I disassembled more counters, the rest of the chairs and the tables, which are also useless, and I went back downstairs to watch the farming show. The farming show really isn't that important, but you might as well do it. It's free experience. Knowledge. Since I didn't want to start any fires in the house, I'd start them over the house. Heat rises. It's fine, don't question it. 1 campfire kit. Done. I built floors out to the other side of the house, disassembled more counters, and built my way over to the other end of the house. I still think this is fine. I'm on top of the house plot. Technically, I never left the house. Don't question it. I built a fire at the edge of the roof. Now I would use what was left of the zombies. I could fuel the fire for as long as I needed, as long as I had their clothes. 15 minutes worth of fuel. Scrap wood also made for decent fire fuel, but in theory, you have an unlimited amount of clothing just from the zombies around you. You can even use your books that you've already finished up. Advanced carpentry I didn't need anymore. It was better fire fuel. With just a little bit of work, I had over 7 hours worth of fuel. Now a fire, a garden, albeit a modest one. I'd continue building as I went. Now I could start rationing the food around me. And I was already losing weight, so I might as well attempt to lose a little more and just cook and preserve whatever was left. What had started as a bleak outlook from the beginning had already developed into something with great unexpected longevity. Just as a resilient plant can cling to the little soil in the crack of a mountain pass and eke out a simple existence for itself, so too had I fabricated a foundation founded on resourcefulness, and only 48 hours into my journey had managed to secure all the necessary resources to sustain life. I love wringing out all the resources I possibly can from a small patch of land by spreading out my roots and gripping to whatever is there. What had I accomplished in 2 days? Countless skill points earned that otherwise would have taken me ages to farm in any other method of experience acquisition. Shelter, the securing of a bed, and the building of a campfire for heat and rest. Securing a renewable food source that otherwise would help me overcome my limitations from starting out as an obese character, and set me off into the world at an even greater advantage, stronger, lean, and prepared to confront any adversary. For me, this is the joy of learning such a challenge, and it's what I take out with me into the rest of the game. New knowledge, resourcefulness, and learning. And this is what makes it all worth it in the end. Otherwise, it's just a futile exercise. But I still haven't answered my initial question. How long can you survive in a single home? Day 3 began. I had arrived at the 3rd day, and I slumbered from midnight. Now I began eating the food. On the one hand, it's healthy to lose weight, and on the other hand, hunger pangs are a killer. I'd have to eat low-caloric foods. Leeks, produce, anything green, and I started rationing out the remaining dirt I had for cabbages, spacing them out every other square accordingly, and digging furrows for my cabbages. I found that I was able to plant only 4 cabbages. I still had seeds enough for another plant, but I lacked the dirt to use for it. I also found enough sheets to cover the rest of the house windows, something I neglected before in the bathroom. So adding these throughout the rest of the house, I could conceal my movements, and even a sheet for the front door. And then something new appeared, a police zombie. This is my only way of attracting more. Did he have a gun on him? Only one way to find out. I called out the window, and I dispatched him. A holster, but no gun. It was something. Now a jacket, as well as a bulletproof vest. It was a start, all right. I gathered more wood and dug the last furrow. I also took some dirt from the patch of ground right next to the house. Technically, I was still in the house, right? I also found that there was gravel in front of the house. Day 4 had already begun. Again I slept. I awoke to a thick fog and a banging on the door. With my bat in poor repair, I decided to make it into a spiked baseball bat. It would add to the lifespan of the weapon. In fact, no, but it looked cooler. What I did find in my inventory was curious. Worms. Strangely, you can still take dirt from through a window in the houses in Zomboid, and even through a wall. This is where I begin to be very, very confused. I successfully disassembled the wardrobe and gained 10 planks and 4 nails for it. This was a major win. It meant I had enough to construct additional rooftop, and thus more room for farms. And so using the dirt that I obtained through the wall, I began digging furrows, all the while obtaining more worms from the ground. This was a veritable greenhouse, and I had room for yet more cabbages. I might have, in fact, too many cabbages, and I'm still in the house technically. Why shouldn't I get a lot of dirt? You can see how this is playing out. I'm not about to tell you that this is a good lifestyle, but I truly think you could sustain an indefinite lifestyle in Project Zomboid living in a single house, given the right items. Maybe I could have used a garbage bag for rain collector barrels. But let's see how the rest of this plays out, shall we? I decided to organize the house. It was a bit of a mess. I didn't have much time to read books because I was too busy setting up my farm. You could probably max out your carpentry in the first week if you really played your cards right. Now I had enough for a notched wooden plank as well as a sturdy stick. I could light the fire, burn the bodies, and finish cleaning up the house. Enough for 13 hours and 43 minutes. I gathered the bodies and I added new ones to the fire. They all had new useful items for more armor and anything else I would need. And then there came the first rain. I'd need a lot more if I was to survive in the long term. That night I gathered those bodies in the rain and burned them in a funeral pyre to the old world, a fertilizer to the new. A simple existence, but it bespoke all I've learned, all I've done to grow since I began. Now this would provide heat and some sustenance, and the burned bodies more fuel for the fires. As I heard a knocking on the door, I grew confident. So putting out the fire, could anything stop me? In fact, yes. Overconfidence is an insidious killer, and I had neglected to see just how much exhaustion I had accumulated over the time. Project Zomboid is not fair, but that's what keeps me coming back. If it were fair, if it were easy, it would just be a game. No, Zomboid is a true roguelike. Every time you die, you get nothing, like in real life, which is what makes it a simulation, microcosmic of our lives. When things don't go well, that's just too bad. But you can always use your experience to try again. In real life, it's usually not life or death, but it's always given me the satisfaction of a job well done, when I make it just one more day. Yes, I probably could have survived a number of weeks, but what about when the water gave out? What about when the rains slowed? So till that day, we'll just keep stretching out our arms, and reaching farther than we did yesterday. In this video, I've attempted to survive as long as possible in the You Have One Day challenge in Project Zomboid. In the challenge, you have 24 hours to prepare for the horde of thousands of undead, all appearing from the map edge to converge on your location. Make use of rooftops, hardware, and strategy to keep the hordes at bay. To make things more interesting, I'm going to be playing as the weakest possible character. Our protagonist is a man born with all the negative traits. Weak, very underweight, claustrophobic, chain smoker, hypochondriac, hard of hearing, hearty appetite, thin-skinned, clumsy, conspicuous, among a plethora of other deficiencies. If you want to watch these runs live, I streamed it to Twitch and posted the VOD to my VOD channel so you can watch the whole thing if you want. So I spawned in on the first day, July 9th, 9 AM, 24 hours before the flesh eaters would descend upon my location, hungry for brains. Upon spawning in, I was already in a state of panic from my claustrophobia at being in an enclosed bedroom. What were my immediate needs? Food. As an underweight man, I would require sustenance. So I went downstairs to the fridge and began drinking soda, as many calories as I could fit right from the get-go, to gain weight and start strengthening my weak 60-kilogram frame. Next, water. I used the bottle, emptied of soda, to fill with water from the sink for hydration. The road ahead would be thirsty, and as a completely unfit man, I would run out of breath simply from crossing the street. Now that I had fuel for the road ahead, it was time to hit the town and start scavenging. So I exited the south side of the spawn house and walked, not jogged, my way across town. As I passed the diner, I stopped in to consume a gallon of ice cream out of the back and begin putting weight on my frame for strength. Despite the sense of urgency, I made careful not to run at all because of my severe asthma. I stopped into the hardware store and I grabbed a hammer, a saw, and some planks off the shelves. Then I got insanely lucky when I found a sledgehammer located on one of the shelves. I assembled all my tools in a great spread on the ground below me. I got to work. Now it was mid-morning and time was ticking before the arrival of the ghouls. I would require sanctuary and safe lodging for the next steps to come tomorrow. So I made my way to the largest, most secure structure in the nearby vicinity, the apartment building, located at the center of town. I cried out aloud to create a great rumpus and bait the ghouls from the building to shuffle out in a large blob. One by one they processed out of the structure, drawn to my scent. I used a pitchfork from the hardware store to dispatch a few that had come following me around the corner. One had a duffel bag. If I lost them here, I could lead them away from the building, where I'd spend the next day making my preparations. After a short lap around the alleyways to break sightlines with the rest of the Horde, I killed the last few ghouls that blocked the entrance to the lower floors of the apartment building and made my way inside to begin dismantling furniture and making my preparations for the encroaching onslaught. After I took out the first few ghouls in the lower floors, I crafted a sheet rope from their clothing and prepared it near the second floor window as a means of emergency escape. With that out of the way, around 4:40 in the late afternoon, I sealed myself off from the lower floors once and for all. Safe at last, I ascended the emergency sheet rope and drew it back into my living space, isolating myself from the undead below just a few hours before their arrival. The first phase was over. Now I'd managed to survive that first day and got myself to general safety. But now I embarked on the greater task of making sure I'd have enough food and water to survive days, weeks, or even months in this building. Heaving a sigh of relief, I spent the next couple of hours from 5 to 7 p.m. securing each and every room in the upper floors of the building, now cut off and isolated from the ground below. Staying on my toes, a couple ghouls I made short work of, not due to my skill, but the pitchfork I'd found. I was tired, anxious, and drastically winded. I retired from an exhausting day shortly after midnight, though I was unable to re-energize fully since I was a restless sleeper and waking up still groggy around 7 a.m., only hours before the arrival of the undead. Since I had cut off the lower floors with the sledgehammer, I would be safe in the near term, but what about when their numbers rose? So I shifted into long-term planning. My safety was secure, but what about food and water? So I inventoried the food in the fridges and cupboards, and I decided that I would probably have enough supplies to survive for maybe a few weeks. I was already gaining weight, after all, from eating so many fatty foods, but I need to eat a lot more if I wanted to gather the strength required to realistically fight my way back into the town. I set out on my grind. I deconstructed furniture for carpentry skills. I ate food to achieve gains and get stronger. And I observed from the temporary safety of my apartment as I bided my time getting stronger and digging in to prepare myself for the next few weeks of self-improvement. By the evening, when I peeked out from the safety of my perch on the second floor, the streets were crawling with undead. Dangerous, but out of my reach. As the streets grew with the ranks of undead, the second day drew to a close. At dawn on July 12th, I sledged the way out of my apartment and built a walkway to the north so I could get a better look at my surroundings from on top of the roof of the building beside me. There were hundreds of ghouls in the streets. Resigned to my interior life, when I returned inside, I set about the lengthy task of consuming the last of the perishable foods in the refrigerators and freezers. I cooked beef, sausage, and salmon in the oven. I was already gaining weight and strength, fast, 63 kilograms and rising. And so from the third to the fourth day, I dismantled objects for carpentry skill, cooked and ate the last of the meat in the refrigerators and freezers, and filled some of the pots and pans with water, in case it would shut off anytime soon. Life was good on the second floor and above, but I would need to expand, since eventually I'd run out of food, and I simply didn't have anything I could grow. The hardware store to the southwest of me had seeds though, and if I built my way over to it, I might be able to live up here indefinitely. So in the evening, I took back out my tools and sledged to the southern wall of my apartment, then built another catwalk out to the building adjacent to mine on the south side. My kingdom was growing, but as I called out to the hordes of undead surrounding the building to get their attention, I felt very overwhelmed. I'd need to create some sort of distraction if I wanted to cross over to the supplies. So faced with the precious dwindling time, food, and water in my own building, along with the increasing numbers of the dead below me day by day, I got right to work and built another platform of catwalks further south toward the next building, the promise of future security in sight. I spent the next few days preparing the wooden planks for my crossing to the next building. And on the morning of July 16th, one full week into my survival, I set out from the safety of my apartment to the south once more, with the looming threat of a staircase, feeding up the dead from below, staring me straight in the face. Then after all that preparation, I made one very big mistake. Since I couldn't destroy the tile at the top of the stairs, I left a minuscule opening, a tiny crack in my defenses, where one by one, a trickle of ghouls rushed in like water, on only the smallest bridge which they could balance. Massive folly. Before I even had time to react, there were tens of them on the rooftop. I tried to seal the bridge, but there was simply no time. The horde was too fast, and they followed me back into the apartment, and I had to retreat up the stairs to save myself. How much would I cut off? Just one floor, then two it became as they pursued me up the stairs. I was agonizing over how much to cut off and how much safer it would make me. All this while they were drawn to the banging sounds of my sledgehammer. At last, when I cut myself off from them, having sacrificed 2 whole floors of supplies to preserve life, I finally sealed myself in once and for all. It was just past 6 a.m., and I was exhausted. What would I do now? That was weeks' worth of food and water I'd left downstairs, now swarming with undead. I gazed down from my shrinking island of safety at the rooftops I'd worked so hard to secure, now teeming with them. All that preparation gone to waste. Then things went from bad to worse when, in an instant, there was a loud bang, and all the lights and electronic devices shut off. That was the last of the power and water. Now I was truly derelict, stranded on a sinking island, surrounded by death. I slept briefly, but when I arose in the morning, to my surprise, when I looked out the window, most of the ghouls had left the rooftop, flowed back out like the tide. Now, perhaps, there was a brief window of opportunity, so I seized on the chance to gather my strength with the last of my food reserves in the upper floors. Now I could take back my territory. So quietly I patched the bridge I'd destroyed and prepared for the dead to come up the stairs. One by one, though, they heard me. I tried creeping and staying quiet, but I failed. More and more flooded up the stairs, and though I could handle 1 or 2, the tides kept flowing to an overwhelming number. Thinking fast, I cut myself off once again, just like before. What else could I try? If they could hear me rebuilding, then making my way back downstairs by the traditional means was out of the question. What resources did I have left? Sheet ropes and nails, but not enough of them. Or, if nothing else, I could take off my own shirt and fashion it into a sheet rope. And so that's what I did. I waited until later in the day, and by the time they'd lost interest in the apartment once again and flowed back down the stairs, I tied all of my sheet ropes together and took off my shirt, and descended silently from the window just above the catwalks I'd constructed earlier. It was a risk, but one I'd have to take to avoid a struggle and reclaim what was rightfully mine. This time, luck was on my side, and it worked. Safe at last. At least for now. Now I had time to plan once again. I'd need to get stronger, so I started training my skills. I crept around on the rooftop to farm some levels in light-footed and sneaking, training my stealth. And I continued eating and building up strength, now 70 kilograms and rising. On July 18th, the 9th day, I kept sneaking on the roofs, 2 full levels now in light-footed and sneaking. And at last, after much waiting and preparation, the next day I crossed back over the catwalks and sledged the last hole in my defenses, rendering my territory safe once again, and sealing the final patch where the ghouls could enter. And the final open gap to the hardware store lay right in front of me, just past the southernmost rooftop. But I knew for the last stretch I'd need everything I had in me. The next week, as I inched my way over, board by board, toward the hardware store, still gaining weight back into normal territory, but dwindling in my precious remaining food and water, the hordes outside grew to unfathomable masses. Did I even have a chance? That being said, I still managed to pack on levels in fitness, strength, light-footed, and sneaking. Maybe my only shot at running in and out quickly and quietly if I ever managed to get down there, or at the very least, go out with a bang. By the last days of July, I had finally busted my way above the hardware store, and I was almost ready to descend within. But not before I hit the ideal weight of 80 kilograms, and fitness and strength level 2. I would be ready to outrun them, and escape in a moment's notice. To further my strategy and set a distraction, I staged alarm clocks to ring at midday on the roofs to the north, hopefully to divert their attention away from my target. Finally, by August 1st, I dismantled the last of the floors in my apartment for the necessary building materials to make my descent. I trained my sprinting to be ready to flee by running around in circles on the roof, and I tacked on the 7th levels of light-footed and sneaking. It all led up to the 6th of August, when at last I called to all of the nearby hordes to distract them from my primary target building and throw them off course. I pinned down the sheet rope and made my final descent into the hardware store, now to locate the precious seeds and food to seal my eating and sustenance for the next weeks and months to come. Undetected, I had made my entry, and when I peeked into the cupboards, food of all kinds. In only the room I had made my quiet entry. Chocolate bars, orange soda, peanut butter, even cigarettes. I'd spent weeks in anxiety since I hadn't smoked at all. For the first time in the entire month, I was finally relieved of my depression. But then, after I was done rummaging, I heard a noise. 1, 2, and 3 heard me. I think it was just the sound of me rummaging about in the upstairs, but who can really say? It wasn't so bad. I even waited to make sure the way was clear. But after dropping off my supplies in my next descent, 50, maybe even 100 had already made their way upstairs and were swarming about like ants. Just the insane folly. The rest is history. Before I even set foot to the floor, I joined the ranks of the living dead as one more gray, nameless face. But I had made it farther than any claustrophobic chain smoker had come before me. It was a splendid life. The living dead are walking among us. Shambling, undead ghouls, hungry for human flesh. They've taken over our homes, our businesses, and even our shopping malls. In this video, I've survived in the Mall of America in Project Zomboid, starting with only 1 tile. Every time I slay a zombie, I unlock another tile. So starting off on the rooftop of the Mega Mall, I have a few objectives in this challenge. 1. Fight my way out of my spawn tiles to enter the mall. 2. Secure a source of food and water for sustenance and longer-term survival. 3. Raid the mall for weapons to fight larger swarms of the undead. And 4. Use all of this to unlock more tiles in the wider world inside and outside the mall to the greater Louisville region. It all begins with the first day. I spawned in on day 1 on the mall rooftop, only a backpack and a baseball bat in my inventory, and only the starting tile to move around inside of. Within seconds, it's off to the first trial with 3 ghouls approaching, widening my zone to tiles 2, 3, and 4. Next. Of the 2 doors nearby, one fell with constant banging of the undead. 3 more approach, unlocking tiles 5, 6, and 7. Now, with enough room to move around in, I could move closer to either entrance to get a better sense of my surroundings. On top of that, one ghoul dropped a helmet for added armor and protection from bites and scratches. Time passes. Bit by bit, more shuffle toward me from the mall's entrance halls. Then, one by one, I managed to shift my way back toward a maintenance closet, which I thought might contain more weapons. Something I could improvise. I knew my bat wouldn't last long, and there were more ghouls banging on the doors nearby, signaling others lurking just around the corner. With another 2 approaching, by around 3 in the afternoon, I'd finally managed to unlock enough tiles to secure a foothold in the maintenance closet behind me. And with it, a doorway for taking larger groups of ghouls on in smaller chunks. Nothing crazy for the loot in the storage closet, just a pipe wrench, but it would help me last a little longer before I was forced to go wrestling with my bare hands. With one more shout, I've attracted the last of the nearby ghouls for a fight backed up against the security of the maintenance closet door. With all that conflict, it's enough to unlock the last tiles. 1, 2, 3, and 4 to peek my way at last into the sliver of an entrance at the back of the mall. Nothing grand, just a maintenance hallway behind the stores, but it's better to start small than attracting too many at once. Making a little more progress, I called out to the left and right to signal a few more from either side to bat them down. Along with it, unlocking enough tiles to take a peek beyond the maintenance halls to the main concourse of the mall. Just 20 paces or so from my position. Lots more experience with the bat and lots more wrestling, all leading to enough tiles to finally step foot out onto the second level of the mall's main plaza, teeming with undead. Just everywhere, and honestly, more than I can deal with right now. With all that, it's enough to steal a sneak peek, then make my way back to the mall rooftop to deal with the one last ghoul remaining inside the security office. Then path my way over to the metal chair on the other side of the room, and finally shut myself off in isolation with the chair in the maintenance closet. This will be my bed for tonight. The first day coming to a close, and with it, a well-earned rest. 74 zombies killed, and a level up in my melee skill. But along with it, mounting anxiety from the gnawing hunger and weight loss, since I still hadn't located any food. But that's all for now. After a long slumber, it's a rise to another day of retracing my footsteps and handling the undead that have now shown up in the places where I just cleared them. It's a long and winding travel ahead to get all the way around the concourse to the deli on the second floor across the way. Hopefully a source of food and sustenance to keep me going. But whether my weapons or hunger would give out first was a toss-up. For now, it's careful footwork, swinging with the pipe wrench and making sure there's always enough room to back up, dreading the possibility of getting surrounded and trapped with no tiles left to unlock behind me. After a lot more swinging and unlocking with it the whole path to lead up to the entrance of the deli, that's the last of what I can accomplish on the second day. It was getting dark and difficult to see around me. Along with the mounting hunger, it's too risky, and it's off to sleep before giving this one last shot tomorrow, just short of starvation and dehydration. Day 3. Weak from hunger and thirst, this time it's off to using all the newly secured territory to path all the way again once more into the store. After a lot more wrestling, it led me straight to meat. Glorious meat. And the sink for refilling my water bottle. Now I'd met the next of my primary goals, securing a source of food and water. Check. And along with it, a quick scan of the back fridges. I'd easily have enough food to last for days, if not weeks in advance. The tension was lightened, if only for a short while. At the end of the day, I spent my last tiles to climb the staircase back above my spawn location. I'd spent more than enough time around the rotten, decaying corpses of the undead the last few days, and I'd need a clear resting place to sleep soon, or else risk some further contamination, possibly disease. But not until one more night had passed. And so, by the middle of day 5, it was back up for more ghoul slaying. And with it, enough tiles to secure a sleeping spot in the back room of another security office located even higher above the mall from where I'd spawned, far from any ghoul corpses polluting the air around me. Safe at last. For now. And so now, with most of my immediate needs covered, I contemplate longer-term planning ahead of me. Day 6. I set out after I awoke to start searching the back maintenance closets of the mall for some type of weapon. It started with blunt objects used for makeshift bludgeons like griddle pans, and ended with metal bars and other heavy objects I found lying behind the stores. Until by the end of the afternoon, I'd started a new count, slaying zombies one by one in pursuit of greater armaments. All until I came upon one, armed with a katana. The homage to Tarantino. This would be a major game changer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and more. The katana was the ultimate weapon, slicing through ranks of the undead like butter. It was all enough to make my way northward in the mall to a completely new section. This time, not hiding anymore, but announcing my presence to attract as many as I could to my location. Utilizing the armory of new weapons at my disposal, I carved my way northward to the double stairway on the north side of the mall. All the while, I used the stairway to funnel the undead into a neat path for disposal, and along with it, unlocking more space to maneuver around in and make my job easier. Quickening my pace, after a few more hours of this, I'd managed to work my way to the back of the store adjacent to the stairway and creep behind the back hallways at the very edge of the mall, probably teeming now with undead from the streets nearby. At last, when I opened the door, swarms of them, pounding on the double doors to the mall's exit. A huge boon for new tiles, but also far more than I could confidently fight at once, especially with my weapon's losing condition. It was careful fighting and backtracking for now, opening up wider paths for fear of locking myself into some grisly dead end with no escape. Opportunity yields an exciting turn for treasure, but also along with it, anxiety over a lack of training and preparation. I couldn't fully seize on the moment, but it would take a while to clear them all out, and every wasted tile was more breath, water, and food that I could have used somewhere else. From here, it was a lot more clearing, but by day 9, I had saved up over 50 tiles, more than enough to path a long line all the way from the back of the hallway entrance westward to the nearby shops, all the way leading up to the end of the hall, where the gun store lay with its back entrance wide open for looting. But along with it, all corralled in the very end of the dark and narrow corridor, perhaps the largest mob of ghouls I'd encountered up until that point. I took a chance. By this point, I could nearly taste it. A vast armory of power all within a stone's throw. I crept into the back room of the gun store. The first foray was nothing that special, a couple items, but among them an assault rifle and some ammunition, but nothing more, not least until I cleared more tiles to go exploring the rest of the store's contents. And so, making out like a thief, I'd gotten away with it. Fully armed and ready for more this time, I crept back out the way I came, now ready for more encounters to signal the undead from even further out than before. Day 10. Somehow, through all my gunshots and clearing, I must have dispersed the horde at the back of the hallway. So I returned to the gun store, adding to my arsenal with a handgun and more magazines and options, but constantly wrapped up in the cognitive tangle of what to do next. And despite all my success, it was becoming readily apparent in my gut I might have missed out on the fundamental long-term limitation in the midst of securing all my short-term needs. With no more undead left to fight, when you run out of tiles, your resources have a precarious tendency to dry up fast. Oh well. So maybe that was it. To survive, I'd need to keep reaching out on new frontiers. Grow or die. So I armed myself and carved my way out into new tiles on the mall's main entrance concourse, storming down to reach for the exit, and with it, the open outdoors, preparing to blast out lead to signal any I could. But before that, another night of sleep. Day 11. Sure enough, plenty more had filtered their way back into the mall's main plaza. With plenty of ground now secured, I fought them from above head, outranging those on the ground and hammering any that came up to meet me. Just tons of fighting. Would it be enough? I pathed my way at last back all the way to the main entrance plaza and straight up to the glass doors at the mall entrance, advertising my presence like window goods to any undead nearby that could see me. But still, nothing. Maybe the sad irony is the human tendency to always be dissatisfied, to be agitated. No matter how many goals you accomplish, no matter how many mountains you climb, your problems today, even if you do solve them, will only evolve into bigger problems tomorrow. Sure, there'll be better problems, but by day 12, as I eyed the drying spout of the faucet, my only source of water, it got me wondering how we get caught up in the details and lose sight of the bigger picture. And when you first hear it, it sounds depressing, but the sooner you realize it, the less likely it is to hit you in the face someday, unawares. Sure, I'd survived, but if my rule for the road I'd followed up to this point led me to this, derelict, of what use was that rule? So it's my lot to sit here waiting and grinding away every day, burning my resources and eking out tile by tile any ghoul that roams my way. A well-oiled machine, strategizing for how to make more than the sum of my resources and produce more fuel than I burn. I could tell you that the mall is an allegory for life, or that the tiles are a metaphor for progress or time. But maybe the real question is, what is it to you? All you who pass by. I think that's about enough for now. I survived in Project Zomboid for 12 days and killed over 700 zombies. All just to sojourn here. The wilderness means many different things to different people. To some it might mean the sight of a lush, green forest. Others like to float on the water in a boat. But for me, it means the thrill of self-reliance and roughing it out of civilization. The thrill of cutting out on your own and answering to none other than the will of Mother Nature. So for a meaningful new personal challenge, I tried to see if I could survive in Project Zomboid completely independently, outside of civilization. You may remember, if you've been around my channel for a while, I used to run a large multiplayer server for Zomboid, and although I wasn't a player on the server, I was an admin. I had the most fun teleporting from player to player and watching what kinds of interesting things people were building. Although a lot of my players eventually got tired or frustrated, reasonably so, and left when their characters died, that's just the way the game works, there were a few small groups of players who fortified some cabins secret to most, but hidden well enough away in the woods, and trekked back and forth on looting runs to and from civilization. Sometimes they fought other players. Sometimes they even died, but this made for some of the drama. No one could ever quite challenge them since their bases were so well hidden in the mysterious brush of the woods. Even I, as an admin, had some trouble finding out where they were located. What chance did any other player have then in subverting or fighting these factions? This game invites creativity. I decided to try it for myself since we're anticipating the near release of Project Zomboid's multiplayer, and I never tried living completely independently of civilization. There's still so many secrets to be found, so many systems to be explored, and it reminds me of the creativity that inspired me to first get into PC gaming, and that it's something that invites player curiosity. Day 1. I started by creating my character. I selected the occupation of park ranger because it's well suited to the woods. And I had a rather extensive list of traits. Illiterate, because I won't be reading any books. Obese, because I have plenty of weight worth losing. Claustrophobic, because I won't even be spending any time indoors. Hard of hearing and short-sighted, because I just don't think they make much of a difference. Sunday driver, because I won't have a car. Unlucky, because I won't be doing any looting. And pacifist, because I'll rarely be using weapons anyway. For traits to help me out in the wild, I took cat's eyes for night vision. Dexterous, because I'm going to be pretty depressed. It'll help me if I can transfer inventory items faster. Outdoorsman, so the rain doesn't affect me. Iron gut for eating potentially dangerous food. Nutritionist to help me understand the food I'm eating. Former scout and herbalist for the foraging and knowledge of things I might gather in the woods. And handy to speed along my construction. I decided to name my character Henry David Thoreau after the author, spending his time on Walden Pond. To this I would liken my retreat. I spawned in on the first day at a river. No boats along the shore to be seen, but that was beside the point. This could guide my run and give me a sense of place. It was a lucky spawn too, because you can spend days searching through the woods. Sure enough, in Project Zomboid, there are zombies, and it was actually lucky to find one right away. Being morbidly obese, I may be unfit, but I am still strong. A lucky first battle. I grabbed the wristwatch, and I donned all of the clothing. The sneakers would be most essential. Putting on the clothes, while it doesn't seem like such an essential find, if you don't manage to cover your feet early on, you can die of cuts. But after the fight, my clothes were covered in blood. I walked to the river, and I washed off my clothing. Since it was still summer and there wasn't any fear of temperature going down, this was fine to do for now. I rid my clothing of blood, and I actually looked civilized. We need to consider what are our main needs: food, water, shelter. There's a host of other things to consider. Food. With my stat selections, I did have a good foraging stat to start with. Not only that, but we had a strong experience boost on foraging. I maintained a sense of direction by walking along the river and looking for places to forage in the woods. Sure enough, a few items, some stones, tree branches, but that was it. This is a nomadic lifestyle. Finding a body of water is useful because you can store everything by the shore. You don't lose your sense of where you are or get lost. Foraging is tiring work and it ups your thirst in the game. We also found a variety of berries. None of these were poison berries. A lot of the herbs and plants you can find in the woods can be used medicinally. But sure enough, foraging is very thirsty work, and most herbs don't quench thirst. I foraged until later on in the day, around mid-afternoon, finding ginseng and a few other items. It wasn't a lot, but what could quench my thirst? Violets would sate my hunger, but they lack in fats. Berries also lack in fats, but they can slightly quench your thirst. I sat on the ground eating raw berries. Fun fact, if you have a bowl, you can eat poison berries and make them fun in a salad, but you can't make a bowl in nature, so I was just stuck there eating them. When the feast was through, I had filled my belly, and I'd only just barely quenched my thirst. It was still coming back. In the woods for only 8 hours. I may not look the likes of a woodsman, but I've managed to keep myself in good repair. And of the three main needs, food, water, and shelter, I had satisfied food, at least in the short term. I would still lose weight, but at least I was safe for tonight. Water was next to me, but did I dare drinking straight out of the river? I would have to wait for something safer, and I decided to forego drinking. Having that pile by the riverside, I could confidently run my way through the woods, and forage copiously throughout the woods. Such treasures did I find therein. By the end of the day, I was exhausted. I had done nothing but foraging for about 12 hours. I laid out all my winnings on the ground and tried to categorize them. Exhausted, thirsty, and tired, I had collected 21 berries throughout the day. I used all of them to solve the thirst problem, but they wouldn't make me fat. Certainly not. I had done something to it, but still I couldn't afford to sit there eating berries all day. With that, I opened up my crafting menu. I took a chipped stone and a tree branch I had found and crafted a spear. I equipped it. One of the most dangerous things in the wilderness would be to have zombies nearby but not see it before I go to sleep. So I wanted to make sure that they came to me. Sure enough, a little ways inland, a foe. It was only one, but that would be enough to kill me in my sleep. Gone. I collected the clothing and ripped it up for usage in my fires. These would make good rags. During the fight, my spear broke and I had to take the rest out by foot. Unfortunately, obesity doesn't do you any favors in combat, but I dispatched the rest of them. I collected the rags, and I felt safe. I dropped my broken spear, and although the water was tainted, I could still wash myself in the river, so I did before nightfall. I crafted another spear to defend myself from anything that might come at night. And then I built a stone axe. Now I had sheets with which I could craft it, as well as a stone hammer. I donned the spear on my back, and then I slept by the shore. I might not have had any cover, but I at least had a sense that there were no zombies nearby. I left myself to the will of Mother Nature. When I woke up in the morning, it was 7 a.m. Still groggy and extremely thirsty. I needed to find something to make water safe. I made my way back into the woods. Finally, I'd found it. Lemongrass. Eating enough lemongrass could save you from drinking bleach. I laid it out with my whole collection on the ground. Violets, berries, stones, twigs, grape leaves, mallow, ginseng. It all had use. Nothing else could neutralize poison. So to end my thirst, I drank from the river. Now I'd wait. I decided that this was a safe solution. Just keep searching for lemongrass and you can drink all the tainted water you need. Incidentally, since I had the spear on my back, I found I could start spearfishing. And so that I did. And for a few hours I spearfished. It took time, and it certainly wasn't a quick or easy process. But I was safe from the area. I had started off with no fishing skill whatsoever too, but even I was able to catch a few small fish, gain some basic experience. True, it did take me the entire day to catch 2 measly fish, but what else was I doing out in the wilderness? I also caught shoes, and finally a big bass. This was enough to get me to stop fishing just before nightfall. It wasn't a very eventful day, and I was still thirsty and very hungry. Since I was overweight, I ate berries, but berries just don't have the caloric needs to sustain someone's weight. The fish are richer in macronutrients, and they come in a greater variety for any dieting needs. And while you'd think that you would need to eat a fish hot, right? You'd need to cook it? No, it was the Gollum lifestyle, and I ate the entire big bass. 145 grams of fats. Would it sustain my weight? And in fact, my weight was sustained. At least up until the winter, I could sustain this lifestyle. But I was, again, completely exhausted. I'm no natural fisherman, and this was a hard day of work. I dropped my fish prizes on the ground, and I went back to nature with my stone axe on my back to cut down some trees. I knew what I was doing next. I would need to use the last of my energy for the day to fight off any zombies, so I called out. I ventured deeper into the woods, until I felt confident that there weren't any zombies around. The next phase of my journey would require a lot of wood. It would take 2 hatchets, but I would get 1 tree's worth of logs out of this. Sure enough, my first axe broke before I downed the tree. You need to use tricks to remember where you were in nature, so I placed that broken axe nearby. I came back and finished off the tree. There lay on the ground a haul of 4 logs, 2 tree branches, and some twigs. I took them on my back. Even using only the materials found in nature, you could erect a wood wall, or rather a log wall, with just what you have in nature, including zombie clothing. I would place one of these just on the shore. It was easy enough to fashion. It didn't give me much experience, but a little bit in carpentry was enough. It couldn't defend me from zombies, but it could at least give me a little bit of cover to sleep behind so they wouldn't see me. Weary from the day, I slept. I arose on the 3rd day at about 7 o'clock. Curiously enough, natural cycles of sleep seemed to be kicking in, and now I had a construction at last. But there was still more to do. I would need a lot more wood, and I would need to do a lot more grinding for the next part. I checked out a clearing, the woods. Both of these places were fine, but they weren't fully safe from other players. And while I had made it all this way with nature, I did afford myself one luxury: some nails and a saw. I figured that was okay. The original wall was fine, but you need nails if you want to do a lot more. There's a lot more room than anyone knows out on the water in Zomboid. Even with the box of nails and the saw, this would be very labor intensive. I got to constructing more axes. I would be building a dock next. Now it didn't matter my bodily condition, I had a goal to motivate me. And so, downing more trees, my axe condition gradually improved and I could do even more work, not using up as many axes and getting more out of each one. I could saw the logs in place and make planks of them. Just 2 trees made for more planks than I could even carry on my back. I began building a dock out onto the water. While it wasn't safe yet, it would help me gain distance from the zombies. I built that walkway far out onto the river. During the process, my hammer ironically broke. Before I knew it, I was well out on the river. Not so far, but I could keep building out my dock, in theory, to a place where no player would ever even be able to spot it from view distance. And I could see nothing but river as far as I went out. Now I saw nature not as a threat, but as a means to improve myself while I was exiled here. A way to improve my skills. In the forest, cover from other players and zombies. In fact, I probably didn't even need all of the traits I started with. I think almost anyone could do this. The one thing that was always difficult to find was chipped stones. Most of my forage runs, I needed them, but I was gathering up a whole library of other resources beyond me. I ate a whole bowl worth of berries. Now there was no fear because I had more than enough food to keep me sustained. Curiously, I found that with my current tools, I could still disassemble one of these walls. And so I did. Food, water, and shelter. As for food and water, I had met the needs in the short term and the long term, but shelter is always still a concern. And as I made my way out onto the lake, I thought about various setups that I could use to protect my dock from both zombies and other players. And so with that, I walked out onto the dock, and I made my way out to sleep. I slept on the ground again for another night. I went to bed around 6 p.m. and I woke up before the crack of dawn. Fortunately, you still can fish on the dock. In the morning, I thought I'd keep improving my fishing skills, so I went fishing to see what came up at night. Would any different kinds of fish be out? Once you get a hang of it, everything is sort of a meditative process in nature. I got some socks so I could keep replacing my clothing with just whatever I found in the river. At this point, a bit more of the grind kicked in. But to tell you the truth, it is a long process, and it is a bit of a grind. I did level up in foraging, which was a help, but it still takes a very long time. And I found a lot more of what I didn't need than what I did. A couple of crickets, too. While you could, in theory, go out to the other side of the river and have a very secret base, what I had in mind was something more maritime. And once I could manage it, I built myself a stairway up into nothing. I wouldn't actually end up using this first one, but this next part took a little bit of figuring out. But if I could cut myself off via stairways, I would separate myself off from the zombies on land. Finally, a little bit of ingenuity led me to a design that would make me safe from all zombies. I could finally rest easy. Food, water, and shelter now. Later on, I could implement something like this on the shore too if I wanted. There's still just enough things in Zomboid that make it weird and wacky and make me like it, even for all its flaws. It's a lot of work, but if you really wanted to make something like this happen, you could create an entire fortress on a river. Corridors filled with secrets, packed to the brim with weapons. But if you ever got it to happen, the end result could be something amazing, something that was a splendor to behold. The key ingredient to survival is not your supply list, but rather the mindset of frugal resourcefulness with which you approach your situation, whatever that may be. In this case, my car. For a challenge, I tried to see if I could survive in Project Zomboid by isolating myself to my starter vehicle, a simple 4-door sedan. I've always taken comfort in the feeling of discipline and control that results from following a self-imposed rule. Preserve the things that matter to you. They might be the only ones you ever get. Indeed, if you can forge your mindset to that of a sustainer, a preserver, you'll be a worthy steward of the things that matter to you, and they'll long outlast your guardianship. How would I approach this limitation to survival? I set out as Horus Furman, Carman. On the first day, I spawned in at the map edge beside my vehicle, outfitted with all the necessary items to keep me alive a little while and enough to get started. Surely if you stay inside the car for the entire time, you'll die. That would have limited me to only the items in the back seat. So I made a rule for myself that I just had to touch the car the entire time, and that counted as crawling over the car. That gave me access to the 4 water bottles in my trunk. This would be enough water to keep me alive getting started. So remaining in contact with the car, I crawled around the car and got back in. Changing to the driver's seat, I thought it would be smart to give the local area a look over. After all, I still didn't have a full tank of gas yet. I set out on the road and drove carefully. The cruise control was calibrated at 30 miles an hour. By the lay of the land, I surmised that I was probably on the eastern side of the map. Being without a watch, I'd have to use the daylight to determine how many days had passed. My first goals were to find gas and extra car parts. If I didn't get to a garage or a hub that I could start at immediately, I might find myself derelict and without a car. I bumped up the speed to 80 to conserve gas. Eventually, I made it to a crossroads. Fully abandoned, this might be a good place to siphon some gas before the next leg of my journey. I pulled up next to one of the cars nearby, grabbed my gas can from the trunk, and did what I could to refuel my own engine. Right now I was limited to only 1 gas canister, unless if I were able to find one in the wrecks. The first car had some gasoline, but not much. I'd have to use my own car as storage. Carefully driving around my own car, I opened the window. That was it. Being out of the car counted only as reaching out of the window. Don't question it. Remember, I'm in the car. I made my way around the wrecks, making sure to stay in contact with my own car. Most of them didn't have gasoline though, but it was enough for the journey. Some luck. One of the other cars had a gas can. If I found a gas station empty, or if I could clear it out, I could get unlimited gas for my car. I found a lug wrench in one of the trunks nearby, although the car was in poor condition. And after a little towing and a bit of moonwalking, I was fully fueled and ready for my journey again. But all that towing wasn't without consequence. For the most part, I had taken good care of my car, but clearly I was bumping into things. This called for spare car parts. So while it was still peaceful, I decided to take other parts from other cars, but lacking the tools, clearly I'd need a garage. I made the journey eastwards, slowing my roll, and I came to a crossing, there more densely packed, but it led me to a garage for which I'd conducted the search. Now came the slow, tedious process of using the cover of the rain to lead all of the zombies away from the garage. I blasted the horn. It's amazing what you can do when you're careful with your car. In just a few short minutes, I was able to create a Daryl Dixon-sized horde. It wasn't without danger, nor without its fair share of off-roading, but after a few minutes of work, I was successfully able to lead most of them away. I quietly pulled the car up to the door and shut it. Now I was both with vehicle and indoors. The vehicle itself was in great condition still too. What a success. I drove my way around the garage so that I could remain in contact with the car for the entire time while I searched. Plenty of books on mechanics, but I didn't really need those. I thought it might help anyway, so I grabbed a few. What else was I going to carry in my car after all? I found a car battery charger, a screwdriver, and a radio I could dismantle. Another 2 of those, another screwdriver, and all of that I loaded into the trunk. I found a toolbox with a needle and a saw, and a car jack. This would be useful for grabbing tires, and I was going to need a lot of tires next. It was all useful, but what was most key was that I had found a place to sleep for the night. I slept in the car inside of the garage that night. Safe for now, but I knew that I needed renewable sources of water, food, and gasoline if I wanted to go far. Still, I counted my blessings, so to speak. Having begun my journey in a car made it plausible for me to make positive traits out of negative ones. My obesity would actually prolong my life rather than shorten it, as I could afford to lose a few pounds with the lack of food. Regardless, tomorrow I'd set out for more opportunities to construct the foundations of a sustainable lifestyle, somewhere living off the land. I lived independently of time and woke up to darkness, but not knowing whether it was day or night. I congratulated myself at a job well done, but I had to move. They were already banging on the doors. And so I set out, back for more car parts at the wrecks. There was nothing left for me here, but I could backtrack to where I started from. And so I set back out in the twilight rain. The roads were now growing more dense, and there I was. This was not the end, nor was it the beginning, but it was, however, the end of the beginning. In the words of Winston Churchill, that night I raided the other cars for spare parts, especially tires. For the most part, everything was garbage, but it gave me the liberty to drive like this if I wanted to. So I drove up the road into the night. Fast. Before long, I made it to town where, yes, there were zombies. Overrun. I left the town. There was no use burning gas and tires on something I could never acquire. No, instead, I decided to make a simple detour. Down a few winding roads I drove, and ultimately my search led me to a crossroads. After a long search, I came to rest at the purest, bluest lake. Here I was, fully immersed in nature again. Man, did it feel good. It felt amazing. Now I decided that having acquired enough spare car parts, I could afford to spend some time in nature. Although the way lay off the beaten path, I could forage if I brought the car just to the side of the road. So I drove literally into the woods, and now thoroughly lost, I got out and I began foraging, all the while remaining in direct contact with my car. You can't see the car here because it was hidden behind the tree out of my sight lines. And there I foraged. In the woods, I found some twigs, berries, stones, worms, the usual matter. Naturally, I scratched myself on the groin while I was in the woods, so I ripped up the pants and I bandaged myself. This would be of no consequence, however. I can assure you that I am a man of the woods. I continued my drive along into the trees, all the while remaining in direct contact with the car. I experienced jubilation upon finding 2 tree branches in the woods. For this, I would survive, because there really isn't any other way to get food. Not that I was going to eat the tree branches. No, I had another plan for them. Well, I could, if I wanted to, eat the berries that I had found in the woods, and it would make for a good weight loss diet. After an invigorating 3-point turn, I decided to turn back, and I made my way back out to the lake. And at last, I had an opportunity to sit down beside my car. I'd found a lot of useful items in the woods: berries, stones, twigs, worms, berries, and most key of all, tree branches. These would be useful for making spears. You just need one, and you have a renewable food source in the lake,
with spearfishing. It was all useful in some way. And so there, in the middle of the day, in the peace of the rains, I washed. I even washed my car. Now exhausted, tired, hungry, and maimed, it was the perfect opportunity to fish. I channeled my inner Captain Ahab and began fishing. Yes, it was a beautiful life in what amounted to a tiny house, living in a car. I could only visualize with dismay what the new contents of my car would be when I returned. Cod, bass, berries, rocks, perhaps a pair of shoes here or there. My car was getting very, very crowded after all, and managing the little space I had left for the heavy car parts I was acquiring was becoming more and more difficult. Eventually, the power would go out, the gas would dry up, and my car would break down. How would I confront these problems over the next few days? I thought about all of this, but I kept my mind on the task at hand with fishing. Worrying is rational to a certain extent, but if you spend your whole life worrying, you might not enjoy it. Yes, we can learn to engage and even entertain ourselves with the toils that we go through every day. Even the most banal of circumstances can be occasion for joy given the right mindset. I must have fished for hours, not getting anything, until at last I speared a small trout from the lake. I would live. There I was at peace, perfectly alone. Yes, it was a beautiful life. But what was next? The necessities of life are food, water, and shelter. Of all of our needs, we had obtained two. Food via the fish in the lake, and water via the lake. The shelter aspect is a bit more hazy. Sure, on the one hand, we had shelter since the beginning. Our car is always going to be a temporary shelter. But what about when my car breaks down in the future, inevitably? I'd need to keep salvaging wrecks if I wanted to find more parts. And I don't think that this challenge is over until I have a number of them. I made it my quest to collect tires from other cars and drop them off at the lake where I could eat and drink. That made the most sense overall. I absolutely ruined other nearby cars, and lo and behold, shortly thereafter, a zomb came upon me, clad in survival gear, an opportunity at acquiring yet more stuff. I was a new man, so there at the riverbed, I accumulated my tire collection. All around the county, no tire was safe. I would have them all. But I wasn't acquiring tires for the sake of tires themselves. Tires are a great defense against the undead. From within my car, there were other little opportunities to eke out my niche. I happened upon a campsite where there were several survivors, having discarded rations. This would make another food source, and I could keep these for winter, for when there wasn't any fish to fish. Cool clothing and hats, canned goods. It was all fair game for the car. Much as it ever has, technology will lead the way. I hadn't even been in the world for 2 days and I had more than I usually have in a normal playthrough. I was beginning to think that this car gimmick was actually a brilliantly overpowered strategy, and that were this the real zombie apocalypse, I would run straight to my car first thing. Yes, what a brilliant idea that was. By the end of day 2, I felt comfortable sleeping by the riverside. It was remote, and I was safe here, and I had done a great job. I awoke at dawn. It was time to finish my shelter. To me, shelter meant longevity, and longevity meant supplies. While simple car wrecks were useful, gasoline was a finite resource, and I'd need a lot more of it if I was going to survive. So I drove carefully through the woods, avoiding many cadavers. Many wrecks were unsalvageable, and my next hope lay in a big break, a quick gasoline run. Sure, it would hurt my car's exterior, but think about all the extra time I'd have. Buying myself more gas was effectively buying myself more time, so I made my way downtown. And there, I began the siphon. 1 or 2 cans was all I'd need. I wasn't smart, but I was rash, and I was stupid. I went in this time again, determined not to let my myopia get the best of me. 1 full tank, but had it been worthwhile? I got the hell out of there. Up till this point, I'd been quite certain of my strategy. But one thing's true, folks. In Project Zomboid, as well as in real life, wherever there were or are people, there are zombies. Except at the bar. This turned out to be a major relief. And despite the folly in some of my methods, I was beginning to see that if you stuck to the most remote corners of civilization, you could eke out for yourself a simple niche. Yes, I could be both mobile and stealthy at once. If only I made the right decisions. And if you put attention and care into your possessions, they'll last you a long, long time. Far longer than you had attributed them to be able to last. Any item, given the right care and maintenance, will be around for many years to come. Cars, weapons, and whatever else I could find were a little exception, but I had my fair share of regrets. My time in the town was well spent, and yet I had made more than my fair share of mistakes. Although I now had copious amounts of gasoline, the same couldn't be said of my car. A wise man once said, "Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans." The same could be said of my car, except Damage is what happens when you're getting gasoline. If I didn't start taking better care of this thing, I wouldn't even have a car to carry anything around in anymore, and then I'd be all dried up. But the hour wasn't too late. Certainly not. Using all of the lessons I had learned, I got back into the car. I started by washing my vehicle. I was determined not to run into zombies anymore. A clean machine. But how would I buff out those scratches? Remember, there's always a chance to rekindle the relationship anew as long as there's still life. I revved back up my engine, and I knew what to do next. On my travels, along the many highways and byways of Nox, there happened to be an abandoned car lot. One man's trash is another man's treasure, and soon I'd call myself Dr. Frankenstein with these cars, each one in its own state of disrepair, but combined they could create the ultimate machine, better than any of them individually. In just a few short hours, I had removed the valuable parts to virtually all of those cars, and by dawn I was ready to fix my vehicle. My hood destroyed. As it turned out, the whole endeavor took longer than I had wagered, as it sometimes required finding the necessary car-type parts. It might not last forever, but I would keep on improving. I packed everything I could fit into my backpack and my car, and then I was off. It was back to my lakeside home, now in a new and improved vehicle, but this time I slowed my roll. While I've never been one to esteem luxury possessions, to me, the challenge served as a valuable reminder. Preserve the things that matter to you. The discipline with which you care for your possessions forges a mindset capable of weathering any storm. Make of yourself a keeper, a preserver, and may even the smallest windfall be to you as an unlikely treasure hoard. I returned to the lake, splendid and blue. And now I could rest. After all, now I'd proven to myself that in yet another way, you can not only survive, but thrive, even in the most limited of circumstances. And the most valuable reward? Personal transformation. Yes, I recommend this to anyone. Try the challenge yourself. There I was, lost in blue. In Project Zomboid, just off the north coast of Nox, there's a small island called Kingsmouth, upon which I stranded myself to see if I could survive and navigate my way back home to the mainland. This challenge invites resourcefulness. To me, a survival island is an invitation to confront the bare realities of our nature that drive us every day, and learn to surmount daunting obstacles with greater ease. If I made it out, I would prove my worth and mettle with new skills and fresh ideas. I called to mind the confrontations I expected to face, and hardened my resolve as I dove into a new unknown. I endeavored to create a character for this challenge capable of clinging by the nails to any rare boon of resources I might expect to find on the island. Quiet and nimble, but also quick to catch on and learn new skills. The traits I settled upon were restless sleeper, slow healer, underweight, hard of hearing, short-sighted, and slow reader. The positive traits are more key here. Cat's eyes, dexterous, outdoorsman, inconspicuous, and athletic, as well as a fitness instructor profession. These would keep me mobile and quiet, quick to slip in and out of dangerous situations. I dubbed him Ulysses, in honor of the Greeks' wiliest, craftiest warrior. I spawned into the starter house. Before we start looking for a ship, we need to make sure we'll survive long enough to do that. That means we have a few other urgent tasks to carry out. I closed the curtains, though I couldn't entirely seal the house. Best to keep a secret now. The first task was to find a weapon. A kitchen knife would do, but I'd need more. Can opener, matches, and a lot of canned food, along with some bullets, which might come in handy. I turned on the TV and I switched to Life and Living, but no programming was on. I'd found a weapon, a griddle pan I could use to bash them, but I'd need to clear and protect my immediate area. Maybe even find a 2-story house in which I could sleep at nightfall. At least be quiet around here. And come back. Then it was just a matter of food, water, and shelter. Only once I'd found those things could I begin my search for a ship. The yard was clear, but I could attract the attention of one of them, thin out the numbers. That was one. A safety vest for extra layers, as well as some boots to cover my feet. Dispatching a few more, I decided that the initial house was safe. I tried to attract a little bit more attention, and I cleared the area. The house was safe, though perhaps a mess. As I ventured in the neighborhood, my stats increased. I got a little bit better at being stealthy and quiet. Time well spent now because there would be larger hordes later on. I found a watch on one body. I knew it was October, but I didn't know what time it was. 12:20 p.m. With plenty of time left in the day, I stayed inside. I knew it would be a longer struggle if I wanted to get off this island, so I dug in my heels and set up a base camp here. I grabbed all the household furniture, and I blocked all the nearby doors with it. I also practiced being stealthy. or violent, whatever the situation called for. I found a better digital watch, October the 15th, and 54 degrees outside. I kept improving and being stealthy, but around mid-afternoon I decided I needed a backup plan, and I looked to the other nearby house for just that. This called for a better weapon. I did some foraging in the nearby woods to find a large branch. There it was. I could use this to make a spear, and so fashioning the spear, I attached it to my back. Now I had just what I needed to keep them at a greater distance. It was everything I needed it to be, except it broke really quickly. I fashioned more spears, fought the dead, and made my way into the second house. A fallback point. It would work. And then the alarm went off. And so close to nightfall, I fled the area. All my plans had fallen through. The best I could do was walk off into the woods. Not good. This was very bad. I did manage to hop a fence, dispatch one with a duffel bag, and run off with the bag in hand. If I was smart here, I could lose all of them in one shot. So I hopped yet another fence and lost them all in the tennis courts. I stole away back into the woods. Gone was all my progress from the first house. With my weapons broken, I simply had no better plan than run away quietly. I'd be winded and tired that night, weary from a day of fighting and avoiding the dead, only for it all to be in vain. But all wasn't lost. I switched back into my sneakers and ran away. Being light-footed would do more for me here than being strong. And after a little searching, I found an office building, some cans of soda to keep me awake, and I was able to break line of sight for long enough. With lots of windows, I was food on display, but at least I could see them before they came to me. There were also a lot of books in this place. I could use these to learn more about the ships and cars I'd need to repair along the way. I found one pamphlet on generators, pair of scissors, and conflict, but that was enough for one day. Now I was tired. As luck would have it, there was a maintenance room in that office building. I found an axe, some nails, a saw, a flashlight, some duct tape, and I was able to quietly remove a chair from another part of the building and bring it back in there to sleep. At least there were no windows and I was safe. A whole day had passed. What had I accomplished? Sure, I had lost my initial shelter, but yet doubtlessly I had improved, and I was growing ever stronger, quiet, and more deadly by the minute, able to slip in and out of tight spaces and accomplish my objectives with greater ease than on day one. I slept that night flooded with new learning, yet still laser focused on doing whatever I could to escape the island the next day. When I woke up, it was raining, and I noticed that my new home was right on the water. This would be an opportunity to search for ships nearby. I made my way down the hall, and I found the employee break room. Being underweight, I decided to eat whatever was left in here. A feast of tuna, yogurt, and spaghetti bolognese. I also decided to read the books on mechanics and electricity. While I had a rare moment of peace, I knew it would be rare to find a good vehicle, so I learned what I could while I was here. I ate a burger and a lot of ice cream. I washed myself, and I found one more duffel bag. This was rare and important. More storage space, and I could travel like a turtle with my home on my back. There in the quiet of my room on the second day, I finished the book on mechanics. Not much else to do, and since it was still raining at 7:20 p.m., I thought it best to stay inside. I microwaved a chicken breast since there was no oven to be seen, and that would suffice for more calories. Being ridiculously tired, I turned in at only 8:30 p.m. I'd wake up early and hopefully take advantage of the morning fog to move around. Unable to sleep, I'd need to search today for a better bed. It would hamper me in combat and I couldn't keep going on like this. So at the crack of dawn, I made my way out of the office building. And in the morning rain, I made my way out onto the pier to look for boats and cars. I found some shotgun shells, some glue, a metal pipe, and fortunately a wrench which would help with fixing. Car jack, trowel, duct tape, and a welder mask for a bit more protection. With the building separating me from the mainland, and a few gas pumps still working on the docks, I figured this would be a good place to set up for where I would eventually leave the island. If anything was out of gas, I could just bring it here. All I had to do was keep the main building clear. More of them were coming every day, but attempting to win that battle was just fool's play. So instead, I stored my items away near the storage crate and walked off. If you want to become self-reliant, you first need to master your own movements. I made it my main ambition to train myself in the art of stealth. If I was going to get off of this island, I'd need to do it quietly. I could safely train while behind a chain-link fence, and yet separated by a considerable distance. By the late morning, I was becoming very sneaky. Just beyond the chain-link fence were a police station and a few cars in a parking lot. I investigated. I met only one that I quickly dispatched. So far, I was safe all the way into the parking lot, and there it was. I didn't know what kind of condition it was in, and I couldn't get to it right now, certainly, but it was an opportunity at escape. I entered some of the cars. One had a key and a little bit of gasoline. After that, I made my way over. What kind of condition was it in? Calling over one police, but being careful just to draw a few. This was good fortune. Experience, a police jacket, and even a pistol for my troubles. Not that I would be using it anytime soon. Took out a few more in the parking lot. Due to good planning, I was able to clear the ship in just a couple of hours. Unfortunately, I'd need to tow it if I wanted to see anything about its condition. For the last few, I used unconventional warfare. This basically just meant doing reverse donuts in the parking lot. Strategy. That was enough to dislodge the ship. Or so I thought. I needed a new plan. I grabbed what I could. There was a revolver and a shotgun on the police officer I had just downed. I used all of this. After I cleared out enough of the parking lot, I could quietly make my way into the police station. It had more weapons and defenses. Might even make a better base. It also had a second floor, which was invaluable to me. The rooftop helipad might not be useful for its standard traditional uses, but it could be functional for an escape. The armory, however, was occupied. Not for long. There I discovered a treasure hoard. This place had everything. Anything you could want, it was here. And while I couldn't use much of it because it wasn't suppressed, I could still use a lot of this in a pinch. It'd be loud, but it'd get the job done. And night vision goggles would also help. With that, I quietly made my way back over to the dock. That was enough for one day. I didn't have anything else to prove. I escaped with what I had found. And I was safe and lucky to be alive. Above all else, the night vision goggles were the most valuable. I could use these if I wanted to move around in the dark undetected. At last I looked the part of a survivor. Mobile, equipped, and highly utilitarian. I loaded up my magazines and I got ready to go back out. As night fell, I made my way back out. Another chance to sharpen my skills and delve deeper into the island for more supplies before my escape. As luck would have it, I found an axe. Sure enough, night is dark, but night vision goggles are kind of cool. I was able to use this to sneak around more and rack up more kills, pretending I was Sam Fisher all the while. Using all of this, I was able to sneak my way back over to the warehouse. There was one thing that could dislodge the boat. The area was clear and quiet. I made my way in. I could take them out one-on-one in the night though, and I felt pretty safe doing so. But then they all started coming. Not much time left. I used the night against them by escaping into the dark. They'd be attracted only to their own noises. This was safe for now. Don't question it. Fighting off the last few, I admit I got pretty lucky here. A sledgehammer was just what I needed to get this thing unstuck. And so in the middle of the night, with the moon as my witness, I freed the ship, and I budged it clear. Now it was time to have a look inside. The ship turned out to be in pretty good condition despite all the things I had done to it, but it was too late and I still wasn't very well equipped. And hungry from the day. I decided to head back into the main building I had cleared before. They say the evil you know is better than the evil you don't know, and I wasn't about to take a chance in an unknown location. To give myself an even bigger advantage, I decided to turn off the lights in the facility. That way I could see, but they couldn't. Thoroughly exhausted and out of breath, I destroyed my axe. I turned in for the night only in the wee hours of the morning. I rested easy, knowing that my escape was in sight. What had I done? What had I accomplished? In a phrase, self-reliance. But the best was still yet to come. I woke up on day 5 groggy, but now determined to give myself a final place to rest. I would still rely on stealth, or violence, whatever the situation called for. In the morning, I found a suppressor for my pistol in a tool shed. It wasn't perfect, but it'd work, and it might help me with any unforeseen enemies as I towed the boat. In fact, it did come in handy. I wasn't Sam Fisher, but it wouldn't be long. There was only one last thing I'd need. A tow rope. After some conflict, I decided to be a bit louder. I'd work with a hatchet. I wanted to get off this island. So I started the car, and I drove away from the sound of the fighting. Fortunately, the noise radius wasn't so high, and I was able to get out of there. It wasn't easy to get out of there, and ultimately, I could have been more careful. But let me tell you, I'd had it up to here with that island, and I was feeling ready for a well-deserved rest. I used the ship and the car in the last way I thought that they could be useful to me on land. As it turns out, 8 wheels are better than 4, and ships are very heavy. And then my wheels went out. I took out the rest of the zombie horde, leveled up in shooting, and at long last somehow got that car to the sea. Don't question it. After a couple of hours of dragging my car along the ground, even if there was a good chance it wouldn't work. Apparently I was missing 3 out of 4 tires. Not good. I performed the tire change effortlessly by taking tires off of other cars, a process I called tire arbitrage. I installed the last of the tires, but only very late at night. It took me long enough. After a whole night of tinkering with the boat, I was ambushed. But at long last, I was able to launch it onto the water. I made it on, but I wasn't in yet. I still had to add gasoline. At long last, it was time to leave the island. I was queasy from all of the dead bodies around me, or so I conjectured. Finally, I managed to get into the cabin with a crowbar. I got to the controls, I turned on the lights, and I now had a new home at least. I could sleep safely. I spent some time in the boat reading, along with some much-needed repair work on some nearby cars. I bade a fond farewell to the island. And with that, I boarded the boat, made my way into the helmsman's seat, and hot-wired the engine. The boat was mine. I made my way away from that island in the fog. There were still so many left there on the shore. I was comfortably out of reach and safe at last. And while the mainland was still a ways away, I took pride in the fact that I had overcome Kingsmouth. Now it was off into the mists. Off beyond the vacation homes, the quiet, foreboding loneliness of the island. It was back out into the ocean. I was bound for new adventures and different shores. I had survived the island.
To me, my escape demonstrated that we can increase our resolve and flourish by endeavoring to encounter stress, and not only cope with, but seek out challenges that set us off to discomfort. Anything that invites physical, mental, or spiritual anguish, or even desolation, is an opportunity to cultivate the strength of one's faculties. But rather, we should seek out opportunities at stress and anxiety, to confront our weaknesses, our desolation even, and in so doing, we will as a result be better equipped to confront the stresses and challenges of our own lives. So that's what I take out with me from this into the real world. Games can play out like microcosms of our own lives, and make us better if we confront them with such greater mindfulness.
And then I finally arrived. Mainland and safety. Shut off the boat, dropped anchor, and swam to the land. At long last, I was safe again, and I could leave that cursed isle behind. Hello? Motivated by challenge, I've decided to endeavor the CDDA start in Project Zomboid, with one stipulation. That's right,
We'll be playing with all of the negative traits. A truly masochistic experience.
but after over 650 hours, I think it's time to start as our character.
Young Tuck.
In a burning house, in a panic, bleeding, wet, sick, in pain, and drunk. I love this start. Okay, first thing we need to do is pause, grab the mug out from the shelf behind us, and fill it up with water because we won't have a lot of water where we're going, and we're going out. There's absolutely nothing else left in the house, unfortunately, and it's mostly on fire. There's only a pipe wrench in the bathroom nearby, but I'm willing to not panic. Let's just see if the fire just stops. We'll just wait over here and close the curtains. Right now, I'm more afraid of the zombies than I am of the fire, and there are definitely zombies outside. The fire has not yet stopped, so we'll just keep waiting. It seems that the fire is beginning to spread into the room. There is the fire. Great to have the fire in here. Okay, we're gonna go back out into the other room that's now burned down completely. Now, armed with a fearsome pipe wrench and a glass of water, we can begin to account for all of the things that might kill me. Bleeding to death is the first threat. We're going to need to just pull those out, those glass shards from my beautiful body. And it appears as if there's no house left, so we're going to go off somewhere else to search for shoes. It doesn't appear as if there's any over here. We'll just skirt through this way and make our way over to the other house on this side. Here we go. Okay, there are... Oh, God, geez. No, maybe not. We won't do that. We'll just climb back into the window of the first house. That would be better. And await our persecutors inside. Here comes one now. Hello. What a great way to handle adversity. Fantastic. Now we get a watch of all the absolutely useless things to find. We'll wear these socks. Why is my existence torment? Wear all of your clothing. Oh, for God's sake, Jesus, hang on a minute. Already, I can feel myself metamorphosing spiritually. With all of the... For God's sake, everyone get away from me.
Alright, well, I did manage to find shoes and socks, but I'm still bleeding out of my crotch, so I need to just steal a t-shirt. And although it's the dead of winter, we're just gonna go ahead and take these long denim shorts and hope that that offers us enough insulation from the cold. More are coming by the minute. We don't really have a lot of time, so I'm just gonna go ahead and need to rip up this clothing. And then we'll use that, yes, that dirty sheet to bandage our crotch. Yes, there it is. Fantastic. I feel amazing. Absolutely amazing. We're gonna need to conserve our energy for a few minutes from now. We can use the heat from the burning corpses that are chasing us in order to stave off the cold. Why are we still cold? We're standing right next to a few gentlemen who are on fire. I'm going to take this conga line around the house and hopefully make the area just a bit safer. Now armed with a pipe wrench. Oh, amazing. We can just wear finally a shirt. What a prize.
Oh god, I feel great. Designer fashion, didn't even have to pay anything for it. It's time to go again, and there are more. Do we have enough time? And yes, we can put on the shorts. Already, this is shaping up to be an amazing playthrough. Now, since I don't have the energy to fight these ones, I think I'm just going to have them all set each other on fire. And wowzers, thrilling, very excitement. I am an enormous pile of garbage. Standing in an enormous pile of garbage. Okay, all of that walking around did wonders for our health. Not only am I wearing clothing that is objectively trash, as I embody almost everything that could be wrong with a person. My traits include such physical assets as unfitness, weakness, and obesity. Hemophobic, agoraphobic, thirsty, thin-skinned, illiterate, to name just a few. But we made it to 7 p.m. I mean, that's something right there, isn't it? Let's go speed walk our way back home. Not even really a speed walk at this point, just sort of a sad shamble. And pick up any clothing that we can. Look, now we have the privilege of wearing pants. We have pants for having been through all of that. Great to be in them. These will keep me alive. I can't even get a glass of water anymore. Oh, we have a moment of quiet. Let's use this opportunity to find somewhere to sit down. I think I have the privilege of sitting down now. An opportunity to sit. And since I'm afraid of being outside, I need to spend some time quieting down before I can sleep on the ground. Yes, I'm too scared to leave the first house. I admit it, but I think we're safest just staying in here and not chancing it out in the real world. All right, wowzers, a chance to sleep. And unfortunately, I'm considered to be a restless sleeper, which means it's extremely difficult to fall asleep. So I wake up in about 20 minutes. Okay, let's try to fall asleep on the ground again. And that did only a little bit, but it's enough that I can actually jog for a few feet. Okay, at 6:10 a.m. we'll wake up, and oh, there go my plans for today. Alright, let's go back inside of that first house. And for God's sake, I'm getting out of here. Okay, a can opener. And this gives me enough pleasure to drive me to the brink of physical ecstasy. And a magazine. Oh, Frabjiste. Kalukale. A belt. Oh, wow. I never thought I'd get one of those. Wasn't that relaxing? Now we need to ask ourselves, is there anything I could do to markedly improve my condition? I'm still sick. I'm bleeding with an open wound that's gonna keep getting worse unless if I close it up. And it is getting worse. Well, we can take all of this clothing and wear it. That'll at least keep me from dying of hypothermia. And this satchel will help me to carry things around. That gives us clean sheets we can use to bandage ourselves. Unfortunately, my body is being crushed underneath the weight of 7 rags. I am that weak, yes, it's true. However, it's improving. We can wear the belt, put the can opener in the satchel, and then now that we've managed to scorch the earth, we can at least get a glass of water from this house. That would be absolutely amazing. This is ecstasy. And unfortunately, 1 full mug of water is enough to make me over-encumbered in weight. We're just that weak, folks. We're going to have to leave most of these rags on the ground if we want to stay standing. I need to put this pipe wrench down out of respect for my weakness. I'll also need to put down the can opener because I'm being crushed under the weight of a can opener. Well, at least we're no longer being crushed. I can go get them if I need them later on. Let's explore the other houses now that they're abandoned. The wonders of the indoors, because I get extremely panicked when I'm outdoors. I can't actually read this book because I don't know how to read. My illiteracy was an unfortunate decision. I can't drink this milk because it's rotten and I'll die if I drink it. However, this pepper is on the menu, and so I'll eat some pepper. That won't kill me. Time for a cool dipper of water. We'll also wash ourselves because we're becoming panicked by being covered in blood. That's not really doing us too many favors. So it's time to wash. I feel amazing. A scarf will also keep us warm. And these denim jeans are clean. Clean machine. We can also wash our socks in the sink and wash our sneakers in the toilet. As it turns out, that fire at the beginning was actually a good thing for keeping me alive. It gave me a moment of rest. A moment of tranquility. Now that all my clothing is clean, my panic is beginning to subside. We can take these painkillers to feel less pain, and then it's on to the next residence. In we go. This one has an actual can of soup. We can bring this back to the can opener and eat it. There's also salt and pepper here, a feast. We'll we'll bring these back to the can opener. I'm really looking forward to this meal. I think a zombie is following. Yeah, there's a zombie back there, but we'll see if she actually follows us. Now that we're back at the can opener, we can open up the can of soup and yes, eat it. Okay, we have to prevent the zombie from getting the soup. So we gotta fight for our soup. It's time to stop. We can't just keep moving around here in burning daylight, gyrating and hoping that the zombies won't find us. I need to arm up and get somewhere safer. The farmhouse to the north will make for suitable habitation. The necessities of life are food, water, and shelter. Only there will we be able to acquire the heat to stave off this cold and rid ourselves of infection while there's still daylight. We'll eat some salt and pepper before bed. That'll raise our strength. Now we have enough strength to carry the can opener in our pocket. Although our life is still torture, we might be able to get one night's sleep. Well, after 2 rounds of painkillers and about 19 hours, we managed to get 1 full night's worth of sleep, so worthwhile. Of course, our bandage has gotten dirty again, and our wound is probably infected. However, this fog will serve as a blanket of cover on our way over to the farmhouse. There we'll have a steady supply of water so that we can switch out our bandages whenever we need. Then we can start to search for a needle with which we can sew up our wound. So now we'll cut a little detour into the woods, not die of a cold hypothermia or the infection that we're experiencing, or die from running out of breath, but hopefully make it to the farmhouse. Look, the fire is still continuing all the way over here. Wow, great job on the fire's part. We're gonna avoid that, and I can hear a zombie. We're just gonna head in the other direction with the little running that we do have at our disposal. We don't have quite a lot of it. And I scratched my arm on a branch. An unfortunate turn of events, but we'll just take off our shirt and rip that up and then use that as a bandage because we just don't really have many other options here, unfortunately. We're slowly dying from it. Great, we survived being scratched by a tree. My jubilation is intense. And there it is. Yes, the plowed farm fields. Amazing to be here. We need to avoid being scratched by any more trees on the way here, and it looks like we've made it through the woods. We'll also need to remove that bandage from our groin and replace it. We need to do this about 3 times a day. This is becoming a bit unbearable. We really could use that needle sometime soon, or we will just slowly expire. And now I return to the place where I belong, the farm, a majestic and rustic retreat from civilization and its perils. There are guests, there are people in here, okay? We're going to need to, oh Jesus, hang on a second. Rather than fight them, we're going to utilize the power of our noisy cold to just draw them away from the residents. We just want to get everyone out of here. We can't possibly fight 5 of them. If there were 1 or maybe 2, I could take over this place, but we're going to need to just walk away and hope that they decide to all leave. Great. I am speed. Except I'm also very tired as it turns out. We're going to use their short-term memory loss here to get back into the farmhouse and then, oh god, they destroyed both of the windows. It's not going to be safe anymore, but at least it wasn't burned down. We can fix this. Oh, the big hiking. This is the greatest item in the game. Oh, Frabjus Day. Kalukale. Wow. That was insanely lucky. I bet you we won't find anything anywhere near that good for a long time. More books I can't read, more things that aren't useful. Some tuna. Okay, that's good. We'll eat that immediately. Or rather, wait. I have another idea. Nothing in these, nothing in here besides a pen, another pipe wrench in here, and antidepressants. Depression be gone. Just like that. More painkillers, good. But unfortunately, no needle. Well, it's no matter. We can find that somewhere else. We can eat the tuna, take the antidepressants, and find 1 more in the shed. This will be worthwhile. Good. We can use this for more bandage changes. This is going to buy us time before we find a needle. It really is urgent because we keep losing health. Okay, a dust mask, I suppose it'll help, but unfortunately that's it. Now we dispatch the last of them and sanctify the area. Well, we've now rid ourselves of depression. We've insulated ourselves, cleaned ourselves. We may not be done with our cold, but we're staving off our wound infections. Although it may not appear as if I'm brimming with health, I can assure you that I am bound for great things. Only how am I going to sew up this wound? So after another 2 rounds of painkillers, I can get 1 night's worth of sleep. Time's a wasting. It's time to fill the hole. Now that my arm scratch has healed, I can work on the deep wound in my groin. If I manage to fix this, there will be a chance at life and longevity. It's time to head out. While I may not be able to run, I can certainly walk across the neighborhood. I'll get through it. Ooh, car key. Car key. On this car which is in equally bad condition as me. This will require a later investigation. No houses are safe, and the neighborhood is back and active. I'll need to use guerrilla tactics. Needle, salt and pepper, no needle. Despite my narcolepsy, I've managed to walk across town calmly with a horde of zombies close behind that I can't actually see. We can just ignore them as long as we remain calm. Alright, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. We'll call out the whole neighborhood, and there's our target. If I can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, then I'll be a man. But what's more important is what I may find within. Not in there. A needle and a bandage. It's time to get out of here. Our quest had stood on the edge of a knife, saddled by hardship and woe. I just have to get away from that horde. One last quick job should do the trick. We will return to the farm by nightfall, and there I will seal the hole, all the while avoiding the zombies. I can't go on. I'll go on. Except that now I lack the strength to carry even my pipe wrench. I have one last hope. A feast of pepper awaits us. I can go on, eating the pepper, thriving. Oh, I think we actually do have a moment now. So with the last of my energy, it behooves me to remove the bandage, sew up the wound, rebandage with a bandage. I am safe. And yet I'll need to drop the can opener. My life depends on it. Well, there you have it, folks. I returned to my rustic way of life on the farm.
What would you do if I removed half of your options? Project Zomboid. Challenging, to be sure. But with mouse only, very challenging. It's always a satisfying experience to overcome limitations and learn about faculties you had available to you all the time, but didn't even know about due to an imposed self-rule of discipline. I think it's fair to say we each possess a well of abilities from which we seldom tap the potential which lay there in store. Just as the blind man's hearing and sense of touch are sharpened by the blotting of light, so too can we each sharpen and cultivate our other faculties by a self-imposed rule of deprivation. You can do this in your own life by choosing not to take part in things that give you pleasure. In a few days, your reward circuitry will be reset. Colors will appear more vibrant, and the world around you will light up. Today, we embark upon a cringe quest of struggle to point and click our way toward apotheosis. Our spiritual journey commences within the dankest of kitchens. It's important to understand the adversary we are confronting today. I will use only one hand to play Project Zomboid. This is about overcoming limits, and the journey will push our creativity to engage with the world around us in novel ways. Day 1. The first day is about getting oriented with our new surroundings and faculties. Fortunately for us, Project Zomboid has a pause button where we can stop, think, and consider our options whenever it's important. Let's get oriented. First things first, looking around. So far, so good. We can do that with our mouse and never have to touch the keyboard at all. It appears as if we're inside of a house. We add this to our ontology and continue down our excited, right-handed quest. So what's next? Movement, a faculty traditionally reserved for the left hand. That's okay because we can right-click our way to victory. Moving everywhere with my feet. The next puzzle, closing the curtains. Well, we can just click on them, that's fine. What about opening the door? This is a major confrontation, but we can also just click on it. And turn off the light before we leave. I accidentally close the door, and then walk out and close the door. On purpose this time. I know this takes a lot longer, but maybe this journey will lead us to tranquility. I walk outside and apotheosis. My body is now outside of the house. Zombies. Wherever there's a threat, we'll be stuck planted in place, therefore this will require some planning. I have a few options. Either walk up to the zombies and fight them, hoping that more don't come and I can manage it, or risk my life. Perturbations overwhelm the spirit when confronted with a foe whom we must face with only one hand. We call to mind the fact that we're cultivating the will of the mind. We strengthen our resolve against this intrepid adversary, or avoid them entirely. But first we'll need kitchenware with which to confront them. When you mold your mind to process the resources in the world around you as weapons and tools in a grueling fight against the undead, albeit with a major handicap in place, like mouse only, everything in a mere kitchen can be conceived as a weapon of war. A sweater, okay. Baseball bat, that will be useful. And a school bag.
Now we can fight. Wielding a mouse, we must confront the zombies in such a fashion that we position ourselves advantageously. Now is not the time to tarry and falter, fall all over ourselves, but rather dispatch a strategy that brings the adversary to our own home turf. 1-2, 1-2, and through. The baseball bat goes snicker snack. Alright, combat is not a good idea, but I did get a wristwatch and this majestic hat. There's another one. We'll take this one at a time. I am not a violent man. I prefer the moniker Man of Violence. These two are distinct, you see. Stop. We need to think. Thinking is good every now and then. If you don't think, you might get hit by a bus or something. Yes, I insist that being able to pause at any given moment is a more honest way of playing Project Zomboid. After all, how else could we have an existential crisis every 5 minutes? Experiencing agoraphobia at the enormity of the world around you? Simply pause and think about it. It's easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle, the speed of everyday life. You might lose your head, but there's truly more value to be had in slow, methodical thought over a long period of time. Behind this window, we encounter another zombie. Usually the cause for alarm, but instead we'll just open the window, not panic, and do that. No more problem out the window. And we get free stuff. You see, walking is a matter of infinite hope. If we slow down our movements and actions, the cadence and rhythm of the world around us will match our tempo. Every move we make must be calm and calculant. No, really though, I see people do this in multiplayer servers all the time. They go off running, and they get themselves killed. Sad, like watching deer run into a hunter. If you simply practice your walking technique, you'll probably live a lot longer. If you remain calm, you can avoid another existential crisis. See where a little mindfulness gets us? We're slower to be sure, but the greatest chess player can seal victory with the fewest moves. By taking only the fewest, most important actions with mouse only, we've cut down on unnecessary movement and struggle that would otherwise be wasted as heat. Look, it's only the early evening and we've already taken out 7 zombies, soon to be 10. 1, 2, 10. That's good. Dear God, I'm hungry. I could eat my whole left hand right now. Instead, I'll sit and watch TV. Learning is something I can do, although I have only one hand. Thank you, television. I have learned. Television will save you from the zombie menace. No, it won't. It's time to get back to some reading. Although I am slow, I grow more powerful every day. I can pause, I can speed up, and I can have an existential crisis while I'm reading. Wait a minute, that reminds me. Television actually will save you. Thanks to my good friend Nurse, who made a bunch of videos on these exploits in Project Zomboid, which will hopefully never be patched out. This is something we can all enjoy even with only a mouse. That's right, no internet required. Now we just take all of these value tech televisions, which look nothing like they were in The Sims, and we're going to create a moat around our house with televisions. There's one of, well, I think you can see where this is going. Let's just speed up time. There's 1, 2. This will require a lot more. Alright, job well done. One day through. Alright, it's time to go to bed. It's 10:50 p.m., very late. I think about the way life is and the way things are going. Tomorrow I'll steal more TVs. The second day. We wake up at 4:20 a.m. A new day brings a renewed sense of purpose. A rebirth of our very mission here. More and more zombies are coming every day. I won't be able to keep them back with this mouse forever, so we'll embark upon long-term planning. Observe, when confronted with television, they're simply stuck. But when we use television for good instead of evil, great things can happen. After only one montage, we awake, having illegally appropriated every TV from the nearby homes. Soon we can relax and sit on the grass. TVs are genuinely the greatest walls in Project Zomboid. Completely indestructible machines, a veritable force field from the ranks of undead that will inevitably swarm upon our walls if we pass the time here a while. How many more do we need to collect? Well, enough until the entire house is surrounded, of course. Our kill count said 22 and rising. But now, pause. A moment of reflection on our struggle as a whole. What is at stake here? Why am I surrounding my house with televisions? Actions aren't important in life unless if you can answer the why question about them after all. Consider these televisions. They're a metaphor, an analogy for what we're all struggling to achieve in life. What is it? Most of the time, it's probably making more money. Once you get enough money, or in this case, TVs, to surround your own house, you'd think you're good, right? As it turns out, that's only the beginning of this existential crisis. We spend most of our lives trying to get the TVs so that we can sit inside, but we never think about what the importance is of sitting inside in the first place. Wasn't all of the meaning to be wringed out in this struggle in that of obtaining the TVs in the first place? Therefore, we play the game and we decide if we live our life only in pursuit of the end of sitting inside of the house with the TVs, the struggle isn't worth it and the journey is not worthwhile. Therefore, I take joy in obtaining more TVs. Only a few more now. 1. Crap. We have to get out of here fast. 1, 2, 3, 5, 30. Never before in life have I ever felt so completely safe. A TV, a TV. My kingdom for a TV. Is there any deliverance from any of this? Is our experience, though televised, authentic? Yes. So much rests on the assertion of authenticity of our own experiences. For if we don't, the validity of our entire experience, our whole livelihood is at stake. So we rise at 4:20 a.m. again. I open the door. And now, with the TVs having been placed, we test whether our superpower is one that is authentic. Yes, but there's still one more piece, and this will require a long walk in the rain. Where to next? Of course, the police station. Where else would we obtain righteous firepower? We obtain, of all things, a shotgun. But this is no ordinary shotgun. You see, the shotgun is a metaphor. A metaphor for what, you might ask? Is it capital T truth? Is it God? The very performative act of interpreting the shotgun is the truth and validity of our own experience. So long as it rests there on my back, you can be sure that the experience was worthwhile. Its wielding symbolizes actualization. This is truth. This is our truth. It is a pragmatic truth in that it validates and makes our experience worthwhile, and it makes our journey back to the TV castle pregnant with meaning. Was it all in vain? Was it all a worthless experience just to be cast aside and forgotten? Or will it remain with us? Every day, the choice is in your hands. This commenced as a challenge to play Zomboid with only one hand, but it metamorphosed into so much more for me. Will you accept the challenge every day to engage authentically with the world around you? Or will you capitulate and be sold abstractions and blithely sign away contracts, forfeiting the legitimacy, the validity of your own personal experience? That, I assert, is the challenge we all must accept each day. Carpe diem, seize the day, and fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds of distance running. Or is it nothing to you, all you who pass by? They say you don't truly understand the value of something until you lose it. Only in depriving ourselves of the things we most take for granted do we learn their importance. I survived in Project Zomboid in a world whose flame was extinguished. Not only did the dead walk among the living, but the temperatures slowly dropped, ticking down day by day, until life support required layer upon layer of insulation. Yes, I'd need to carefully manage all the elements about me, or risk dying of exposure to the cold. On the first day, I spawned in before the coming of the storm. Naked, alone, and quite listless, without any real sense of place. I was the sole inhabitant of a cabin in the middle of the woods. No one, living or dead, was around me, and the loudest sound was the chirping of crickets, only 3 days before the eternal storm booted. Then the only sound I'd hear would be the roar of the wind through the trees. The cabin had a few objects of potential interest. Among them, a couple of radios with a few frequencies that generated a little static, and news about incoming cold weather, but not much else. I decided to have a look around before venturing out of doors. The air was already frigid, and almost anything might help me. I gathered what supplies I could around me, and returned them to the safety of my lodging, where I lit a fire in the hearth, preparing myself for the first short winter's nap. I decided to keep returning to this camp whenever time allowed, as it was remote, and it kept me safe from any roaming zombies. That night I slept, and there I dreamed the latest dream I ever dreamt. When I awoke, there was a tapping on the window. Disturbed, I rolled out of bed, and so it began there on the second day. That age-old fight of man versus wild, or man versus man. So the nightmare began. Even if fought over by tooth and nail, it was a harrowing victory. The dead had made it to my little shelter in the woods in the middle of the night. A grand mystery. And so the first winds of that chilling winter blew into my very shelter in the woods. And there I would be destined to sojourn, a stranger to myself in that very cabin. A swift flight would be the answer. I ventured forth. My assailant was, or had been, an animal trapper out camping in the woods until the virus claimed him. Nearby, domestic fixtures such as the outhouse were cause for concern, and greater trepidation wandering this new hostile landscape. But logically, it followed that there must be more trappers nearby, so I sought out their camp in the morning twilight. I was a scavenger, and each victory or discovery was another stepping stone toward escaping a life of being marooned, lost in that cabin in the woods. Sure enough, my next adversaries were, or had been in their previous lives, trappers, resting at a camp. With a blade, my swings were clean and true. This meant a surfeit of supplies looking ahead. The next question was, would it be north, east, south, or west? The answer didn't really matter, whichever one you pick. Just stick to your decision and don't veer off the path. Or you could just be lost forever. It was essential that I take myself to a location with greater infrastructure, or I might be lost in the woods for far longer than I'd care to be out here, especially at the start of the storm. Developing a keen sense of direction when you're off venturing through the woods is a habit vital to life. Natural landmarks like roads are a lifesaver. Lucky that I found one, and I found a lot more than just that. 2 passengers lost control in an overturned vehicle. Dead, alive, or somewhere in between, I scavenged what I needed. Many of my items were torn and frayed from venturing through the wilderness. The trunk, unfortunately, was locked. But the bodies I found reanimated, even after some delay discovering them. I disposed of the corpses, but I'd been out in the woods too long. At only 10 degrees, things weren't looking good out here. I sought shelter inside. Staying outdoors too long is taxing on the body. Nearly spent, I fought a few of the prior inhabitants, but for the most part I simply calculated what positioning would lend me the best tactical advantage, or chanced evasion whenever no opportunity at a swift kill arose. I knew I needed heat more than anything else. The longer I stayed out in the cold, the more tenuous my chances. By nightfall, I stealthily maneuvered back to the house and cracked open the window into a temporary shelter. Practically a womb unto itself. But for now, it would preserve life and hope along with it.
2 days out in the cold and the overgrown wild, overtaken by nature and the virus. The worst was behind me, but the air temperatures would certainly keep dropping, and dropping to a lethal sub-zero. But that was all ahead.
The next day, I embarked once again on my journey, now determined to make the most of every option and weave my way through the right decisions to stay alive. Though the air was getting colder and the storm was clearly imminent, one home nearby was an easy opportunity I snatched at greedily. Only one inhabitant, and he was facing just the right direction for me to enter and leave quietly. There wasn't much in the house, so I made my way right on. When you can identify all of civilization's landmarks, you'll know you're headed in the right direction. Finally, I spotted a river, and along with it, a path. At the end of which, I chanced upon a cabin in the woods. Another one, like the one I had originated at, but this one featured a little more activity. I was improving, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching me, lying in wait for me to drop my guard. I took glory in my good fortune and tidied my surroundings. A clear space would make for a clear mind, and I'd been out of doors for days, not just cabins. I needed a more stable shelter in which to take up lodging, or else give way to the madness that is nature, with or without the undead there. After a little cleaning and organizing of all the things I had accumulated, I went to bed. The thin veneer of the wall blocked out the entropic forces of nature, ever creeping closer and sullying all that I'd built up for self-preservation and more high-minded activities. After a little more consideration, I decided that I was safe and went to bed earlier today, and I wiped off a bead of sweat in relief. 3 full days. I awoke in the dark. The morning's first light brought foraging and more outdoor time. I was quickly becoming a man of the woods, and the uncertainty of nature that had first sent chills down my spine was now a peaceful recess from the mind's constant chatter. Sure enough, leaving the woods behind, there loomed a well-groomed mansion, now giving way to the tendrils of ivy reclaiming the lonely structure. I made my way inside. There were a few inhabitants. I thought it most prudent to quietly dispatch them one by calling out. A fluke, but it could have easily meant my life. Shock led to adrenaline, and adrenaline allowed me to fight like I never had before.
I vetted the rest of the house, made company now only by the eerie hum and creak of household fixtures and appliances. This house in particular was a rare one for rural Kentucky, being outfitted with a second floor. This turned out to be a vital layer of defense from the dead, and with room for a view.
During these quiet moments, I took account of my good fortune.
And the snow seemed more a thing of beauty than a threat to life. And so the onslaught of winter began with a childish note of nostalgia.
The simple act of collecting and taking inventory of my supplies quieted the uproarious thoughts and fears that raged over my mind like a storm. I was a master of my tools, and in that idea I took great comfort. When you don't have a home, a backpack is like a small piece of one to carry with you, and I stored away keepsakes I found as I went searching through those buildings. Eventually, I came to find that the cul-de-sac community, though certainly outfitted with a plethora of modern amenities, was not actually as secure as it first appeared, with doors hanging ajar in unexpected places. But there was lots to explore, and I took comfort in the fact that I had secured a garage for housing a vehicle when I eventually found one.
There's nothing quite like the pregnant feeling of anticipation at the start of a storm. I busied myself and probed each of the residences for an opening. I got lucky and made my way inside, searching the cabinets and dispatching of the previous residents, much like I did in the last houses, taking inventory at every corner of what could and couldn't help me, and most of it could not help me. There's something liberating about the notion of the apocalypse, in that all sense of private property vanishes. Everything becomes shared, signaling a return to that great ancient hunter-gatherer way of life. And it's the great social equalizer. My only enemy was the temperature outside, and how many layers I could put between me and it. I took myself back inside and found the fireplace, made a trip back out to forage for some wood, and started a fire in the hearth. As the heat of the crackling fire diffused into my bones, relief washed over me and soothed my spirit, and I basked in the glow of the warm embers until it was time to turn in for bed at the end of the night. The storm raged on through the night, and as I slumbered, the flakes fell faintly and amassed into a thick white blanket over the once familiar rooftops of that cul-de-sac, making of it one gray identity, a mere blemish in the face of those nameless woods. I ventured out of doors at that mysterious hour no one can tell because the snow illuminates the air itself. The shadows of all my struggles yesterday were now fading into memory, and a new world of challenge and subsistence stretched before me like a track. And so there, in the pale morning light of the fifth day, I trekked across the familiar landscape of Americana, now quieted and reclaimed by winter. The walk was short but peaceful, and led me to the outskirts of a village, where I began to sense the familiar signs of the dead, still ever present, and ever a threat to remain alert to. For the moment you let your guard down may be your last. Stifled in my methods, I made my way quietly through a collection of sheds, dotting the periphery, and tiptoed my way quietly into town, neutralizing threats in my path, and keeping a clear exit plan, in case danger should rear its ugly head. I carved a neat path through town, delicately avoiding hordes, but dispatching a few lonely souls. The air was now so clouded with cold vapor that the sun was still blotted out, even at midday. Making my way deeper, I found that the dead were too great in number to chance any looting runs this day, and I needed a vehicle to allow me to safely travel farther from my home. Otherwise, my world would keep growing smaller and darker every day. The storm raged, and I sought shelter wherever it was available, on the periphery of the town. At dawn on the sixth day, the town was under assault. A blizzard had blown in during the night. Conveniently, the storm provided ample cover for snaking my way back into town, and I had already cleared much of the path the previous day, so it meant only a few brawls in the graveyard of the village church before I could infiltrate the town. In the lot, I spied an abandoned ranger truck. After a few attempts fumbling through the compartment, I was able to hotwire the vehicle. And so before noon on the sixth day, I drove back through the intensity of the blizzard, leaving red stains in the snow, and I made my way west toward home and safe lodging. Isolation, really, from the threat. After I parked my car, I sat a while and considered all my options, and everything I had already done.
Sure, I was safe from the cold for now, but the next step was to barricade my home and make it safe harbor from the dead outside in case I should ever have to hole up in here for an extended period of time. I got to work. Everything could be used to barricade my home. The trees had provided food before, now it was shelter. I sawed the logs from nearby into planks and boarded up the windows one by one. When I felt like the structure was secure from the outside, I began disguising my presence on the inside to make it look abandoned, fashioning curtains from sheets and draping them over the windows to hide my activity within. Lastly, I created an escape route in case of emergency by hanging a sheet rope from the window of my bedroom. The corpses I gathered, and outside I placed them in a pile, probably to remain on display for a few months given the cold temperatures. And to make it extra safe, I pushed all of the furniture in front of the windows. My shelter was safe and sound. I had finally checked all of those mental checkboxes, and the inclination to grow worried and paranoid was beginning to drop. Now I could fully take comfort in the glow of the fire and the comfort of a well-made bed. But that night, first it came with a whirring, then a distinct chopping, and when I opened the window, there it was in plain sight. The Horde had come in the night, and the folly of my ways was instantly evident. Hindsight is 20/20, and in a swift flurry of motions, I fought back the entropic forces of fate and sped away. My shelter compromised, the doors and windows being clawed away by cadavers. I checked with relief that the walls were not yet fallen. I searched or clawed my own way back to my vehicle, for it would be many, many miles before I could sleep.